Here we go.
Yep.
All right. Welcome everyone to a regularly scheduled board meeting of the Oceanside Unified School District Board of Education. I'll take the roll at this time. Board members, Stacy Begin
Present.
is present. Board member Eric Joyce.
Present.
Board member Eleanor Evans.
Present.
Board member Raquel Alvarez.
Present.
Present. All members are present and accounted for. All right. The next item would be report out of closed session for action that we took that is reportable, and there was one action on an employee appointment. The board took action to appoint Director of Nutrition Services, Catherine Slonka, who is starting out already, and the vote was 5-0. The next item is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved.
Second.
Got a motion by member Joyce, excuse me, getting old here, and seconded by member Alvarez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Wonderful. All right, item 3A, Superintendent's Report.
Yes,
Dr.
I'm
Vitale.
going to defer my time. We have a very thorough presentation this evening on our learning continuity and attendance plan that we'll be giving here in just a few moments. And we've been preparing for our virtual learning, which opens on August 17th. And tonight we'll also be unveiling our virtual learning and return to in-person instruction guide. So we have a lot of information for the board tonight in that presentation and two others. So we look forward to a positive and productive meeting.
Great, thank you very much. All right, next item we will go to is board members' reports. I'll start with board member Stacy Begin. Stacy?
I do not have a report tonight.
Very good. Next member Raquel Alvarez, report tonight.
I do not have a board member, but I'd like to welcome everybody to the board meeting tonight.
Thank you. Board member Eleanor Evans, report.
There. I do have a report, and I just want to thank everyone that's been emailing me. Basically, in terms of my report, I attended the Human Relations Commission meeting. I also spent the past Saturday helping to pass out food in collaboration with the Labor Council, House of Labor at Palomar University, or I should say Palomar Community College. But it's like a university there. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Eleanor. Member Joyce, Eric?
Again, as board member Alvarez said, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. You took the time to be here, and that says a lot. The only thing that I care to really report is I had the most wonderful meeting yesterday with a group of middle school young ladies who wanted to meet and talk about getting Black history into our schools in a better, more comprehensive way. They formed this group on their own, and they felt compelled and inspired to do this right now, to do this work, and we support them, and I look forward to seeing the push that they're going to help everyone move forward together, because I told them, don't wait, because we all have to push forward together. So I'm excited about seeing what they accomplish and what work that they do. And I look forward to seeing all the other students back at work together in this fall.
Great. Thank you, Eric. We'll move on now to the consent item. We have a request from the public to speak on item 5G, which is ratification of a purchase order of Victory Complete electrostatic backpack sprayers. So I'll pull that item for the moment, and we'll have that speaker in a moment. But do I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendars, item 5A through 5M?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I've got a motion to approve by member
I'll
Begin.
second.
I've got a second by member Alvarez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, we will move to then the pulled item, ratification 5G, ratification of a purchase of Victory Complete electrostatic backpack sprayers. Greg, will you please call the speaker? Or Ann? I'm sorry. Ann will call the speakers tonight.
Karina?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. So I don't have, my comment is only is that I appreciate the fact that you're purchasing this item for the disinfecting and sanitation as it says in the item. But my concern would be is what is the content that you're going to be putting in the content you're going to be putting in. Hold on. Did you just
We heard that.
okay, that you're going to be putting in the sprayer and how long it says that I've been reading up on it. I printed out the form of it's supposed to be eco-friendly and the dissolve rate is faster and quicker. But what is actually the chemical that you're going to be putting in there and how long does it actually stay in the air? And because I know from a personal viewpoint and where I'm working currently is that the chemicals that we have, the disinfectant that we have to use has to be up to standard. So I've actually had kids who have had to walk away for a little while we sanitize things. So that's my biggest concern is what is the sanitation solution you're going to be using in these sprayers. So, and that's pretty much what I wanted to bring up for that particular item. And that's about it. So I appreciate you having the concern about purchasing these. Because it does say custodial staff to sanitize and disinfect classrooms due to COVID-19. So, and it also says the sprayers provide touchless and wipe-free application of disinfectants. So in reading that, I come to the conclusion that it's going to be sprayed in the air or on different surfaces and how long before students can come back into the classroom, et cetera, or into the gym or wherever it's going to be sprayed. So thank you very much, board members. You. Sorry, I meant to say thank you for having me speak, board members.
Thank you, Corinne, so much. We appreciate it. We'll take that on advisement. Thank you so much, Corinne.
You're welcome.
Staff, got any comments to respond? That they'll meet all safety standards of the state of California and the county and health department, and that we are certain that it's going to be safe for our kids to use it, or else we won't be using it. Guarantee you that. And staff can get you that specific information on the chemical components at a later time, Corinne. But trust us, we will not be harming our kids. Can I have a motion from the balance of the board to approve item G? No motion? Okay. Have too much concerns about it? You want to pull it, keep it off, and bring it back?
Can you provide some additional information on the electrostatic backpacks? And if we don't approve this, and if we don't purchase these, we will not have the ability to disinfect classrooms on a frequent basis. Can you provide some more information, Dr. Soto?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Vitale. Thank you, trustees. This evening, what this backpack is being recommended for approval is these are, as our community member pointed out, they are touchless sanitation cleaning backpacks, so hands-free. The cleaning solution is approved through Cal OSHA in compliance with the COVID-19 requirements for acceptable chemicals in the classroom in all of our facilities. They are not considered pesticides. Those are something that we make sure that we are not using any chemicals that are on the list that we receive with regards to what is acceptable in our facility. So it is approved chemicals. The rate for cleaning is approximately 3 to 5 minutes per classroom, with the exposure of chemical in the air on surfaces for just under an hour, meaning, and it's just the moisture, it's just wetness. And then it pretty much self-dissipates and dries on its own. It is not harmful, is similar to the chemicals that you would see in a hand sanitizer of that nature. And these are, the staff is recommending the item for 55 of these backpacks to be used by our custodial staff to clean our facilities and provide that disinfectant moving forward. Those are ready to be used in our facilities at this time.
So just to clarify real quick, so it wouldn't be used like right when a student would be coming in and or near the product, obviously within an hour of when it was sprayed or anything like that, correct?
You are correct, Trustee Alvarez. We do our cleaning and sanitation when our personnel is off-site or finished for the day. So it is typically when it's just the custodian. Custodian is in their proper PPE equipment with their mask and their eye gear, and that they are doing their typical cleaning routine free of any staff to be on site.
Eric? Yeah.
So we're going to be disinfecting the classrooms either way. So this is a tool for them to be able to clean the classrooms quickly, and so that we can minimize the amount of time we have in between cleanings.
It's a time saving factor, the amount of labor time that we will save by having this be a quicker cleaning. In 3 to 5 minutes, a custodial staff member can clean an entire classroom or disinfect, sanitize an entire classroom, as opposed to somewhere in the range of approximately 45 minutes to an hour, based upon the number of furniture that needs to be touched completely.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Are there any other questions for staff? If not, I would now entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. I've got a motion from member Begin and a second by member Evans to approve item 5G. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you guys for working through that, and thanks for bringing that item to our attention, Corinne. All right. The next item of business tonight is item 7A, employment under a waiver for speech language pathologist services credential. We'll begin with a staff presentation by Todd McAteer.
All right, thank you. Good evening, board members and President Blessing. This item is for the California Teaching Commission to allow 2 of our SLPs who are qualified for this position to be covered under a waiver while they complete the required course.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff?
Move approval.
I'll
Got
second.
a motion and a second. Motion by member Evans, a second by member Begin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We got a little cadence there. Thank you guys for bearing with me. If I slip something on a discussion or something that you might expect to have, if I switch it up, let me know. Just raise your hand or hit me up. I'm struggling with this mute and the microphones here, so I appreciate it very much. We're doing fine. Item 7B, ratification of negotiated agreement between the Oceanside Unified School District and California School Employees Association, Chapter 370. Todd?
Yes, President Blessing, thank you. Dr. Soto and I are very pleased to bring this item to the board for consideration, and really would like to thank our CSCA leadership for working with the district so effectively and being able to come to agreement for this item. And it allows us to complete our negotiation cycle for this year. In addition, it opens up for next year. It's a 2-year agreement. So for next year, we'll be able to reopen salaries and benefits and 2 items each per group. And then Dr. Soto has a second part to this as well for approval.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. McAteer. Also included with this item is the county approved and required what's called the AB 1200s. These are the financial documents that are required with each and every contract approval. What it does is it indicates the assurance for the board that any financial implication has been accounted for and is part of now the multi-year projections. Since Dr. McAteer mentioned that there was no contractual compensation, the only noted financial implication is the ongoing, what we call the step and column, the longevity, or not step and column, apologies, the longevity that occurs, professional development that we would anticipate a CSCA member being entitled to. So at this point, These have been, the IB 1200 financial documents have been approved by our County Office of Education within the timely amount that we are required to have their review, and they are now included in the agreement for tonight.
Excellent. All right. Are there any questions for staff?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I've got a motion from member Begin to approve.
I'll second.
Got a second from member Evans. Any further discussion, comments?
Yeah,
Eric?
I wanted to again echo that. Thank you to all of our leadership for our employees. We are relying on having great relationships with you, and I'm glad that we're in a space where we can work together through this time. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Eric. All right. I'll call for the question. All members in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item C, approval of a service agreement amendment with Mid-America Administrative Solutions, Inc. Staff?
Hi, it's Dr. McAteer again, and this item is for your consideration. It's an amendment to an existing agreement that we have with Mid-America, who provides oversight for our retirees who have retired and have portable insurance plans to the HRA. This amendment really is just a minor adjustment. It allows an online platform to be added, which will help our employees have better access. And with a very minor cost increase of about $360 annually.
Thank you very much, Mr. McAteer. Board members have any questions of staff? Seeing none? Oh, yes. Member,
$360 for the district or for retiree? The 360.
The recipients are retired OUSD employees.
And they're going to pay the $360?
The cost is to the district. We manage the plan with Mid-America, so the cost will be taken by general funds from the district.
Okay, and it's a total of $360. It's not per retiree or anything like that.
Right. This is a new additional cost of $360.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to approve this item? I've got a motion from member Joyce.
I'll second.
I got a second from member Alvarez. No further discussion. Please vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Motion carries 5-0. Item 8A is time certain 6:30, and it's a little before 6:30, so we're not going to take that item right this second. Let's jump to item 8B. If staff can stay along with that, and the board too. Approval of the consolidated application, CONAP 2020-2021 spring release. Staff? We catch you.
Good evening, board. Yes. Hi, this is Dr. Levy. The consolidated application is our way that we can receive entitlement grants from the state and federal government based on the count of underserved students in our community. The board's approval of this will allow us to receive our title funds in a timely manner for Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. So we recommend that we have approval of the consolidated application.
Great. Excellent. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, all right. Can I have a motion to approve item?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion from member Evans and a second by member Begin. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Still a little shy of the appointed hour. Julie, maybe you can help me out here. The item 11A is is that too long to jump into now?
It is a presentation, but it would definitely get us to the 6:30 mark and perhaps a little bit beyond. So we could do that.
Is that all right with the rest of the members, or do you want to chill for 5 minutes?
I recommend moving forward. I think staff is ready.
All right.
It's not a long presentation, but it will get us to 6:30, and you'll have enough time to consider the item.
Excellent. All right, let's do that. Item 11A is approval of a revision to the 2020-2021 adopted budget and adoption of resolution number 5/2021, amending the previously adopted budget. Dr. Soto?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good evening, trustees. This evening, we have a presentation for you for what is called the 45-day revised budget. As you may recall, when we presented the adopted budget on June 23rd, we had some significant areas of concern based upon budgeting off of the May revise. Now that we have a signed governor's budget with some changes to our revenue, which we anticipated, but we just were not able to show. Tonight, we're going to be going through the changes, and that we will be able to show you with great certainty that this current year is no longer of grave concern, and that we are able to meet our expectations, and that our director of Fiscal Services, Tim Golden, will be walking us through the presentation. So with that, if we could get, there we go. Presentation's getting ready to go. And tonight, Tim Golden, our director, as I mentioned earlier, will be doing the main facilitating of the presentation. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Golden to walk us through the 45-day budget revision.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Vitale. I will go ahead and give you an update with our 45-day budget revision. If we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so to set a little bit of the context of what this 45-day budget revision truly is, I just want to give you a little bit of the timeline and chain of events from this year's governor's budget. So in January, the governor proposed his budget for 2021, and basically between then and his May revision, everybody knows that the coronavirus has hit. So that significantly altered many of the projections, and when he came out and gave us his May revision, he had to basically make these projections based on a lot of volatile assumptions. And one of those assumptions was personal income tax. So personal income tax, as many may know, were pushed back and deferred from April 15th to July. So that being said, in May, when he presented his revision, he was assuming a lot of different variables without having numbers from the income tax. Sorry if you, the little dogs in the background there. But anyhow, I'll continue there. In May, so he had presented these cuts, and with that, most districts tend to budget their adopted budget from the May revision. And in most years, it doesn't really change from May revise over to the adopted budget and when the governor actually signs in the Budget Act. This year, there's a substantial difference, primarily because what the governor presented at his May revise was much different than what was actually signed into the Budget Act, with the counter proposal coming from the legislature, the Senate and the House. So with that being said, there is a provision in Ed Code that says if there is a material change from your adopted budget, it would be in your best interest to complete a 45-day budget revision. And that essentially got us to where we are here right now, which is the 45-day budget revision. So now that you have a little bit of that context, on this slide here, you'll see the contrasts from our adopted budget to our 45-day revised budget. And you'll see here that the revenues increased as LCFF was restored to reflect a 0% COLA, where we were previously looking at a 2.31% COLA and then a negative and then a proration on all of this, which left us with negative 7.92%. So after the agreement with the Senate and the House, we are now at a 0% COLA. We will experience cash deferrals, and we already have experienced that with our state aid that would have been paid out in in June being deferred into July, and many more deferrals that will come later in this fiscal year. So with that said, they did restore the COLA. They did restore after-school program cuts that they had that were presented by the governor in May, and they also presented some CARES Act money, primarily, which you'll see here is going to be additions from the CARES ESSER funding, which is the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Funds. In addition, you'll see that there were some increases here to expenditures to accommodate these after-school program restoration and the ESSER funds. So with the revenue that comes in, that's restricted funding. So we need to have offsetting expenditures budgeted. And that's where you'll see a little bit of that increase there. Next slide, please. And this slide will then outline the changes to the ending fund balance. And primarily here, the key takeaway from this slide will be the ending fund balance. So as you noticed at the adopted budget, it was 2.5 million, and now we're looking at 17.8 million in the ending fund balance for the current year after this budget revision here. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see our multi-year projection, or MYP, which is our 3-year summary of what we are projecting. And with the new budget that the governor had signed in late June, you'll see that effect on our ending fund balance. You'll see what additional reserves, if you may remember from our previous adopted budget presentation, we needed over $11 million in additional reductions. And in the current year, we will no longer need those reductions to meet our reserve at the 5%, but we still will need additional reserves, additional reductions to meet the reserves in each of the subsequent years that you'll see there. Next slide, please. The multi-year fund balances, so this will be similar to the last slide, but it'll be just the components of the ending fund balance here and what the projections are. And you'll notice that by year 3 in this projection, 2022, 2023, sorry, it's a little strange to say, but we've got a negative ending fund balance there. So we definitely still have some bumps ahead that we need to just iron out here. But just to give you perspective on what the ending fund balance looks like as well in the 3-year projection. Next slide, please. So you may have been hearing about a lot of the different funds that have been coming our way in terms of the federal CARES funds. And just to give you kind of an outline here, this slide will depict what those funding resources are. And you'll want to please just notice the expenditure timeline, where you'll see on that far right column there, when you look at the learning loss mitigation section, the GEAR funds, which are the governor's funds, those ones will extend out to September of 2022. But the coronavirus relief funds, those ones all are to be expended by December 30th, 2020. So quick turnaround time with those funds. The intent here is for the federal government is trying to stimulate a little bit of that economy so that they're giving the funds to us, but they also want us to be able to provide the quality instruction as well as boost that economy. So to break down a little bit further each of these items, we have Senate Bill 117, which we received those funds at the end of the prior year of 2019-20, and those ones do not have an expenditure deadline. So best practice would be to try to utilize those last, and we can use those on things like PPE and other operational items. The same spending kind of requirements are also there for the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, ESSER. They also have a little bit of a further deadline in terms of expenditures, and it's more on the operations side. We did receive the funds as a basis of our Title I allocation, and that's just how they distributed the funding, but that does not have any kind of tie with spending it on Title I allocations. So you'll notice the funding basis in that column there. That's just how we got the funds, how they allocated it to all the school districts. That does not necessarily mean that we need to spend it in that fashion. There's different spending requirements for each component here. And we also have a little bit of layered federal governance as well as state governance, as you'll see at the bottom of the second column, the Prop 98 coronavirus. Those are state funds. So those will have a little bit of different requirements. But to give you specific numbers here, the COVID LEA response funds from the SB 117, that top first row there, we received $289,000 for that. Our preliminary allocation for the ESSER funds, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, is $3.133768. So that's $3.1 million there. And that is what has been built into this 45-day budget. We didn't receive the CDE allocations until last week, and I was just concerned with making sure that we had everything, all the paperwork put together and completed. So the learning loss mitigation allocations are not currently in this budget, but they will be added by unaudited actuals, which we will bring to you in the next month there. So you'll see the updated budget with those numbers as well. But the numbers for the gear funds, which is going to be that first layer of the learning loss mitigation, those ones, it's $1.1 million. The coronavirus relief funds, also from that top tier there, is actually broken into a variety of, believe it or not, there's sub-pots within this, so it gets a little bit more complex. But to give you the overall number for the coronavirus relief fund, it's $12.2 million that we would be getting for those funds. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll notice that expenditure deadline for those coronavirus relief funds is December 30th, 2020. So quick turnaround for $12.2 million expenditures. And I just wanted to make sure that I outlined that portion right there. And then the final piece there that you'll see is the Prop 98 coronavirus relief funds, and that's going to be that state portion. And the number for that is $1.4 million. So the total learning loss mitigation allocation is $14.9 million for Oceanside here. And as I mentioned before, since these allocations came out last week, they weren't factored into this 45-day budget revision. So you will see that those additional learning loss funds into our next budget, and you'll be able to see that effect on the ending fund balance. But I might just give you a little bit of the history. This money is going to be restricted, and essentially it's one-time money. So it's not something that would solve any ongoing kind of expenditures. It's primarily geared towards current expenditures. So next slide, please. We will now dip into some of the COVID-19 expenditures that we have been acquiring. So next slide, please. As you'll notice here on the left-hand side, we have the district ordered items, which include hand sanitizers and the laundry list that you'll see there. As mentioned earlier, the backpack classroom sanitizers. And then what's in the process of being purchased are some of the library books, some devices, and some of those elements like curriculum support from Apex, contracts like that. So we are trying to acquire some of these things. There are a lot of supply issues, a lot of supply chain problems that many districts are facing. So just something that we are trying to overcome and make sure that we can provide the quality resources for our staff and students. But we did receive items from the county office as well. So they provided some things like masks and some other PPE for us as well. Next slide, please. So you may be asking, okay, what are the next steps here? And we will go on to that next slide. Thanks. And so basically what we are asking at this point is the approval of the 45-day budget revision. And just as a reminder that we will be presenting the unaudited actuals at our September 8th meeting, which will then have our closed out and final numbers for 1920, which will have an updated ending fund balance for us to go from. In addition to that, we will have these learning loss mitigation funds in the budget, so you'll be able to see what that direct impact on our budget is. But at this time, I'd like to open it up if there were any questions or comments.
Board members, have any questions or comments for staff? Eric?
SB 98 was based on correct me if I'm wrong, was based on a projection of the funds that would be collected, but it was done before the end of the tax deadline. Were the revenues the state received in line with the projections? Were they better than the projections, or?
So from what I've seen so far from the Department of Finance, they said that they have slightly exceeded the budgeted numbers that they had. So, and those budgeted numbers were factoring in what they were anticipating to come in as a result with losses from COVID. So they're slightly beating those projections, but on the whole, they are still down from what they were obviously in the prior year.
So if they beat the projections, will our allocation of Prop 98 be higher than the original projection?
It's unlikely that they would change that based on the funding format. What they could do is they could use those funds for maybe the following year. Basically, we have our LCFF, our what they call is our floor, which is the least amount that we have. But as everybody mentions, it's kind of like a ceiling where they just say, "Oh, we'll just give them what the minimum is." But
small room.
Yeah, but there's a lot of speculation that next year could be, as in 21-22, could be a worse year than the current year. So if any revenues do exceed projections, they might try to use that to offset cuts in that future year, as well as try to minimize the deferrals that school districts are going to be going through that present cash flow issues.
And then the deferrals, they're contingent upon federal legislation that additional funding from the federal government, that if they come in, then the deferrals could be removed from our liability.
A portion of those deferrals. So right now, the deferrals are projected at $11 billion, and that's not just for our district, that's across the state. But they're projected at $11 billion, and if there is, they kind of call it a trigger. They have a trigger on and trigger off kind of terminology that they've used. And if we do receive additional federal funding, about half of those deferrals would then be offset, so that we would not have quite as a large amount of deferrals, but we would still have some deferrals that we would be dealing with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions from the board?
Well, it's some good news. We have some extra money. That's better. In light
Always
of everything
better.
else.
Always better, yes.
Thank you, Timothy. Shannon.
I have a motion to approve the amended, previously adopted budget.
I'll make a
amendment.
motion.
I will second the motion.
Got a motion by member Begin and a second by member Evans. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, staff. All right, it's 6:45, so we're past the 6:30 witching hour for the public hearing items under curriculum and instruction. This evening we'll have a public hearing on the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, the LCP. As you know, that's a local coastal plan in my prior days as a city guy. The new LCP here. We'll open up a presentation with staff, and this is a public hearing item, but we'll have a presentation from staff, and then we'll have public comments from the public. Staff.
Good evening, President Blessing, Board of Education. This is Dr. Levy. We will be presenting to you tonight our LCP plan, which is our Learning Continuance and Attendance Plan. And that will come up on our screen in just a second. Presenting with me tonight will be Dr. Sparks, who is our Director of Student Services, Mr. Wood, who is our Director of Special Education, Dr. Lawrence, who is our Director of Secondary Education, Dr. Soto, who is, of course, our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Wood as well. Tonight, our presentation will take you through a timeline of things that have occurred in relation to the pandemic, the guidance that we have received over the past 5 months. It will highlight the 3 plans that we've been working on since March 13th for in-person instruction, hybrid instruction, and virtual learning. We will also outline for you our efforts at stakeholder engagement over the last 5 months, along with the most current data that we have based on our surveys. We will have a detailed outline of our virtual learning plan for your review, and we will close with a preview or an example of what our distance learning document, our virtual learning document to the community and to staff. Next slide, please. What we have for you on this page is the start of the timeline of the COVID-19 guidance and directives. I'd like to draw your attention to all of the items that are in red are actually guidance, feedback, and actions taken by state, federal, and national level governments. The items in blue are the action items taken by Oceanside Unified School District. On this, you can see on January 25th, 2020, the first case of COVID-19 was found in California. On February 14th, San Diego County actually declared a health emergency. On March 4th, California declared a state of emergency. And on March 13th, the national state of emergency was declared by President Trump, and schools closed across California. Ultimately, 98% of schools in the nation will close in response to this health emergency. 3 days after OUSD schools closed physically, food was provided to the community. On March 18th and 19th, packets of work were provided to students, and distance learning started. March 17th, Oceanside Unified School District Board met together in an emergency meeting in response to the COVID-19 crisis. On March 19th, Governor Newsom created a full statewide shelter-in-place order. All businesses were closed to do business except for food and drugs stores, restaurants for takeout, and certain hospitals. Doctors' offices closed, as do businesses. On March 31, the CDE, the California Department of Education, announces that schools could remain closed for the rest of the school year. Next slide, please. On April 14th, a month after physical school closure, California starts to put out a roadmap to recovery with guidance about reopening businesses again. At this time, OUSD adds supper, additional food to help our community, to our meal distribution. Our Board of Education receives a report on COVID-19 and the work that's been done so far. On April 16th, school sites have distributed over 5,400 devices to students in need in Oceanside Unified School District. May 4th, retail reopening is announced. And on May 12th, the Board of Education meeting is held with information on thoughts about reopening schools in the fall, including plans for in-person instruction. May 18th, we received changes in guidance for reopening businesses. May 20th, we have 23 work groups with over 180 staff members, principals, teachers, and classified staff meeting together to study all aspects of physically reopening school, providing hybrid learning, and also providing a virtual learning process. On June 5th, 2.5 months after physical school closure, the California Department of Public Health releases school guidelines. Next slide, please. And 3 days later, the Department of Education in California releases guidance for reopening. June 12th, indoor dining, gyms, and salons open, but are mandated to close again on July 13th due to rising cases of COVID-19 in the state. On June 17 and 19, OUSD holds parent and guardian forums. In these forums, we have almost 600 parents participate. On June 23rd, there is a Board of Education meeting with information on COVID-19 and the potential for a full return of students to school and a virtual learning presentation. President Mike Blessing asked staff to look at the possibility of returning K-5 students to school full-time. On July 14th, the Board of Education meeting with information on COVID-19 and its impact on OUSD is shared, including information about the possibility of having on-site childcare options. On July 17th, changes in guidance to schools from the state is once again released. Next slide, please. July 17th, San Diego County is on the statewide monitoring list for increased cases of COVID-19. As a result of this, schools in San Diego County and 32 of the counties of the almost 50 or more than 50 counties in California are unable to open for in-person learning due to the being on the monitoring list as measured by the state of California. July 20th, CIF delays high school sports. And on July 23rd, the CDC issues new guidance on reopening. July 23rd through 30th, our OUSD work groups meet again to discuss the schedules for virtual learning and how we can best serve students, given the new guidance from July 17th. On July 30th, we have more updated orders, and actually last night, on the 3rd, new guidance for reopening is released at 6 o'clock last night. And today, we've received clarification on approved on-site activities at school sites. Next slide, please. These are some of the examples of the types of guidance that we have received in June. We received guidance from the County Department of Health, the California Public Health Department, the California Department of Education, and the National CDC. Next slide. In July and August, we received 2 additional guidance on school reopening. We received updated guidance from the county, and you can see that we do have additional CDC information. Next slide, please. These guidance documents really talk about the importance for the local discussion of reopening schools, and our staff and community have looked carefully at these. These guidelines and consideration are based on the best available health data at this time, international best practices, and the realities of managing school operations. While this is the novel COVID-19, it is new, so understanding of the science and transmission of this disease is constantly being updated. Next, please. The California Recovery Roadmap, which was established about a month after the physical school closure, outlines a series of stages that the state of California must go through in order to reach full recovery. As of this time, we are still in stage 2, which does mean that lower risk workplaces cannot open as of yet. Next slide, please. Throughout this work, we have structured our work with using the stakeholder process, work groups focused on specific targeted ways that we will address returning to physical school, how we will ensure that we have a high quality educational program, how we will meet the needs of our underserved students and our students with special needs. We have had a steering committee, which includes the presidents of our 2 bargaining units, and of course, our presentations to the Board of Education. It has been essential to us that we provided opportunities for parents, guardians, staff, employees, and community to provide us with their feedback, and we have used that guided by the guidance outlined previously. Next slide, please. Throughout this process, as we learned more from the community, we have been studying and planning 3 approaches, and each of our months and each of our presentations have focused on a particular one. We have a plan for in-person instruction with safety measures in place, hybrid learning with safety measures, which a hybrid learning is a blend of in-person and virtual learning to reduce group size and increase physical distancing, and a plan for virtual learning. Next slide, please. Each of these 3 plans have particular components that need to be considered for implementation. And each plan has implications for the level of risk to students and staff, and also ways to reduce the risk and enhance the educational opportunities. In-person learning would use the instructional format that we have developed over many years, following state standards. This is the criteria we have for all of our educational programs. And in fact, the governor's mandate says that our hybrid and virtual learning needs to be tied directly to the type of instruction that students would receive in in-person learning. In-person learning would not allow for physical distancing, but there would be on-campus instruction and 100% of the staff of the space that we have would be used. Virtual learning, with students learning at home some days and students learning at school some days, would involve campus instruction. Would not involve campus instruction, I apologize. Virtual learning would be 100% at-home learning, and hybrid would be 2 days a week on campus and 3 days a week of distance learning. With the hybrid, we would be able to reduce our use of space by 50%. Next slide, please. In this illustration or these photographs, you can see pictures of schools that have already reopened. And this is in-person learning, where you see there will be hand sanitizers, physical distancing, increased cleaning, and wearing of masks. If you look at the picture on the top right-hand side, you will see that the students are wearing masks but are not physically distanced with 100% in-person learning. Next slide, please. In our hybrid approach, we again follow the same rigorous standards and programs and are led by our credentialed teachers, but is in a lower risk environment. In this environment, this allows for a physical distancing between students that can lower the risk of transmission of COVID-19. Next slide, please. So Oceanside Unified School District, as we said at the beginning of the presentation, is committed to gathering stakeholder perspectives, parent and guardian feedback, and educator and teacher expertise. Next slide, please. In May and June of 2020, we collected parent and guardian feedback in both written response, small group meetings, and survey data. We offered small group meetings over 3 days in Spanish and English in both daytime and evening settings to ensure that parents could have an opportunity and guardians could have an opportunity to share their perspective with the district. Next slide, please. Through this process, families shared the challenges that they had experienced in the springtime with COVID-19 and the physical closure of schools. The common themes across our small group meetings was the difficulty in learning new technology and internet access, challenging managing student learning at home with the hours spent supporting student learning. Parents shared that they might have had limited familiarity with class content. They also shared that inconsistent time for classes was a challenge, and also navigating multiple platforms for learning. Communication was complemented by many families, but it varied from teacher to teacher, with it being a challenge for families who had multiple children with multiple teachers. Next slide, please. Overall, the services provided to students and families that parents wanted is that we found that students, they wanted to have opportunities for students to be with peers. They wanted child safety, physical activities, and exercise. There was a deep interest in ensuring that students had opportunities to participate in visual and performing arts, that there were supports for social and emotional health, that educators received support, and that students with special needs were also taken into special consideration. They also shared that they wanted specific schedules for face-to-face learning and assignments, and common tools for instruction and communication between the staff and the students. Next slide, please. In May, the staff came together. So we also found that staff also wanted to ensure that we had educational opportunities, that we had supervision of students, enriching activities, nutrition, socialization, and of course, safety was a priority for all families. Next slide, please. In May, staff came together to form work groups to study the best way to approach learning and related services like transportation in the future, given the guidance from the CDC and the Department of Public Health. Time was spent considering what types of activities would be lower risk and how we could modify our in-person instruction to ensure that we lowered risk to students and staff for in-person instruction. We also looked at how we could ensure that we had a high quality educational program that addressed the needs that parents identified of having arts, common platforms, and common scheduled times. Parents and staff also looked at grading and assessments and how those things would impact learning into the fall of 2020. Next slide, please. In July, as guidance was changing, we felt that it was important to reach out again to families. So on July 22nd, there was another survey launched with over 2,200 responses. We also had district parent advisory committees on the 23rd and 24th in both the day and evening and in Spanish and English, virtually hosted by administrators in our district with over 400 participants. We also brought together our LPAP committee for virtual meetings. This stakeholder engagement was directly related to helping us build our LCP plan to ensure that we were meeting the needs of our staff and our community. Next slide, please. As we had the survey, we wanted to share with the board the responses. So in our survey to families, we found that almost 75% of those who responded to our surveys of stakeholders were family members. We had classified staff and certificated staff as well. Next slide, please. We also asked what were the top priorities from stakeholders based on a list and open responses. So what we found was that families said one of their top priorities was hands-on materials for their students, such as crayons, pencils, workbooks. Families and community also shared tutoring was important. Consistency in our communication platform. Opportunities for families to learn more about online learning and digital platforms. 34% shared that technological devices for students were essential, and also learning more about online tools. And 25% shared that professional learning for teachers and staff were also a higher priority. We had many other responses that were write-in that had one or two responses. Next slide, please. We also asked our community what would need to occur in order for them to feel safe for students to return to in-person learning. The number one response was increased campus cleaning, followed by frequent hand washing and sanitizing, low numbers of COVID-19 in the community, having facial coverings required, ensuring physical distancing, and 11% of the respondents to our survey said nothing was needed to return to in-person learning. Next slide, please. We also wanted to get an understanding of who needed connection and devices to access virtual learning. What we found from this is that from our small groups is that families shared that they may have Wi-Fi in their home, but they may not have devices if they had multiple children in the same classroom. What we found from this question was almost 67% of those respondents to this question said that all their children had access and devices. 11% said none of their children had access, and 22% or 22.4% said that some of their children had access. This is important information as we start our outreach to find out who we can support with these services. Next slide, please. Of the respondents who used our food and nutritional services, 79% reported that the meals met their needs. Next slide, please. We also asked if families wanted to have additional time for intervention. And what we found that 47.7% of the families surveyed said yes, they would want their child to participate in additional time for intervention to support learning. There were 17% who said no, and about 35% who were unsure whether they would want to have that additional time. Next slide, please. We also asked about child supervision. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Jordy Sparks, please.
Thank you, Dr. Lovey. When asked about child supervision, 53% of the respondents said that they would not be interested in child supervision, and about 30% of our respondents said yes. There were about 18% who said maybe that they would be interested in child supervision during regular school hours. As you can see from the slide here, we've had about, we had at 1,948 responses to the child care supervision survey. Next slide, please. On a separate survey, just focused on childcare specifically, we had 121 responses as of last week. The largest percentage of families who are interested in childcare work in the essential care industry of healthcare. Back to Dr. Lovey.
Next slide, please. As we talked about our process for how we are approaching our learning about and assessing the needs, we have been giving reports at every board meeting about our COVID-19 response to the Board of Education. And each of these meetings have had a specific focus, whether that be about in-person, about possibilities of bringing back the kindergarten through fifth grade students, or about hybrid learning, or about potential schedules for virtual learning. Next slide, please. Overall, throughout the COVID-19 crisis and the closing of schools, OUSD has been committed to a collaborative and open process to engage our community. Through our surveys, we have had over 4,300 responses. We have had over 1,000 participants in family community virtual meetings. 200 district employees have participated in designing our plan, and 7 Board of Education meetings have occurred, not including this evening, that have also had over 200 to 400 people observe these meetings. Next slide. At this time, due to the current infection rates in San Diego County and the governor's order to use virtual learning when a particular county is on the state watch list for COVID-19, which San Diego County is, we will be opening school on August 17th with virtual learning. At this time, we want to share with you how we have implemented our community's feedback, the expertise of our teachers, the leadership of our principals, and the knowledge of our classified staff to implement an effective virtual learning program for students that will mirror our in-person learning until such time as we can return to in-person learning. Next slide, please. As we were prepared for our virtual learning, we had guiding principles. These included providing a high-quality educational program for students, establishing lower-risk environments for staff and students, being sure that we follow the health orders from the state, county, and CDC, which has meant that we have needed to adjust and pivot as we've received new guidance. We felt it was essential that we have 180 days of face-to-face interaction between teachers and students. And we also wanted to be sure that we had opportunities for online and offline learning to develop multiple modalities in students. We also wanted to ensure that we would have opportunities for intervention for students who may have experienced learning loss, and a full curriculum that would include arts, career education, and physical education. Next slide, please. And I'd ask Dr. Lawrence to please join the meeting.
Thank you. We continue to work hard to build and improve the manner in which virtual learning will be delivered to students in the fall. As previously stated, distance learning in the spring reflected emergency learning and teaching in response to the pandemic situation. We operated from a place of holding students harmless for the abrupt pivot which led us to institute credit no credit grading, which in turn created voluntary learning experiences, leading us to focus on engagement and outreach. In the fall, we will engage in virtual learning where students will attend classes daily, led by a teacher who will lead each day with live interactive lessons and rigorous learning experiences that meet course content standards. Students with disabilities will receive enhanced related services, and our English language learners will be provided with a supplementary support class option. Next slide, please. Our virtual learning engagement is built upon teachers engaging with students daily. These live sessions will provide students with the opportunity to engage in learning with their teacher and peers. The teacher may engage students through whole group or small group interactive learning experiences. The focus of the live session is for the teacher to provide students with new or review information that is essential to expanding their knowledge in a way that they can independently practice and apply the new learning. Students will be graded in part based on their demonstrated proficiency and growth within the content. In this virtual learning environment, students' participation and engagement will be key to their success. Students will follow a daily schedule where attendance will be taken daily, as our scholars' presence is essential to enriching the virtual learning experience shared with their peers. Students will have opportunities to engage in extended learning through intervention, enrichment, office hours, and tutorial supports. The goal is to provide students with consistency, rigor, and support in this virtual learning environment. Dr. Sparks will further expound on the supports we will offer to students.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. So support for students is at the heart of the work that we do in OUSD. These supports include a rigorous full curriculum taught by certificated teachers, including the arts and physical education. Counselors at all school sites. It includes access to supplemental online tutorials and curriculum. It includes materials and supplies for learning in real life, tech support, and of course, social and emotional lessons and supports as well. Materials will be distributed to students in the form of workbooks, pencils, crayons at the elementary, and specific art and CTE materials needed to access the curriculum. Distribution of the materials will occur on a regular basis of about every 3 to 4 weeks as arranged by the sites and specific teachers. Next slide, please. Pupil participant in progress is something that we believe that the time spent in face-to-face interaction between teachers, students, and their peers is essential to the educational and social-emotional development of our students. Teachers will provide daily face-to-face interaction with students, and the face-to-face interaction will be part of all lessons for students. Attendance will be taken by teachers during this face-to-face instruction, and small group and one-on-one work with teachers face-to-face will also be used to assess pupil progress. Time and virtual contact with teachers will count towards the instructional minutes required by law at each grade level. Students also need the opportunity to practice skills on their own. Students need time away from screens, working on paper and pencil assignments, reviewing materials, and studying. The time students spend working on assigned work from the teacher will count towards their instructional minutes. Teachers will assign and communicate students an estimated time value for each assignment and activity to measure pupil participation. Grades and feedback will measure that quality of student work. Next slide, please. Attendance will be taken daily during the face-to-face interaction with teachers and peers. Parents and guardians will need to call the school to clear face-to-face absences, and attendance will be tracked in our ARIES system, which is our student information system. The daily automated calls when students miss to families will help families monitor attendance alongside the school district. Administrators and support staff will contact families of students to identify supports needed by families to improve student attendance. One of the things that we've been working on in our work group, including our student services team and several assistant principals, is to focus around 3 tenets around engagement, connection, and intentional support. Engagement being focused on wanting to be here, that there's excitement and that there's reason and that there's purpose to engage each and every day. Connection being that I'm connected through Wi-Fi, through tools, and through relationships. And finally, through intentional support, that a student is supported, and when they do disconnect or disengage, that someone has their back. I'll now pass it back to Dr. Lawrence, who will speak more about our learning platforms.
Thank you. The learning platforms that we will primarily utilize in this virtual setting is Seesaw at the elementary level, Google Classroom, and Apex Learning at the secondary level. The Seesaw learning platform will allow our elementary scholars to demonstrate and share their learning through the use of intuitive tools to demonstrate learning. Google Classroom's use at the secondary level provides teachers with a streamlined tool where they may integrate online tools, distribute assignments, grade, and send feedback, and everything can be contained in one place. Apex will also be used at the secondary level as an additional platform teachers may choose to use to provide students with an online learning curriculum already built for virtual learning, along with the option to use tutorial support to strengthen students' content knowledge. Next slide, please. In the fall, we will resume the use of our standard grading structure. Students will receive numeral grades at PK through 5 levels and letter grades at the secondary level. Teachers may use multiple resources to determine a student's grade. This may be determined by the use of rubrics, formative and summative assessments, quality of work completed when compared to content standards. Teachers will provide scholars and their families with information on grading in their initial communication to families. Next slide. We know that communication is key during this unprecedented time. To expand upon our communication methods, we'll provide families with information in multiple ways. Information regarding scholars' attendance and grades will be provided through ARIES. This system will communicate students' academic progress and daily attendance. Blackboard will continue to be used to communicate general information from the teacher, school administration, and district on information and opportunities our families should be aware of. The Oceanside Unified School District's website will provide families with updated information on school status, resources, meetings, and important tools that parents and guardians may access for support and services. To further expand on specialized services is Mr. Jim Wood, Director of Special Education.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. For special education instruction, it will be delivered virtually, and we will follow the same schedule as general education. Instruction will be provided by education specialists and instructional assistants. Instruction may occur in a separate class facilitated by an education specialist or through a co-teaching model where both the education specialist and the general education teacher are providing instruction together. Students in preschool will use the Frog Street curriculum. Students who participate in moderate severe classes will utilize our unique learning system, which is an alternative curriculum aligned to the Common Core standards. Each instructional meeting may include small pull-out groups as well. Next slide. Our related services for special education include counseling and speech. Those will both be provided virtually in either small groups or individual sessions. Counseling will be provided by our school psychologists, either using Zoom or Google or by telephone. Speech services will be provided using the Presence Learning Platform, which is a platform we recently purchased and is designed specifically for the provision of speech services. Occupational therapy, physical therapy, and adapted physical education will be provided through a collaborative model where specialists in these areas will join whole group lessons being taught by education specialists or general education teachers. Additionally, the professionals in these areas will reach out to students, parents, and guardians individually to ensure that students have access to appropriate materials and activities. Next slide, please. Students who receive individual behavior support will continue to receive that support during virtual instruction. Behavior interventionists who support students will also reach out individually to students, parents, and guardians to share strategies that can be employed at home. The progress that students are making toward behavioral goals will be measured daily during instruction and augmented by parent input gathered during our check-ins. Excuse me. Through our resource lab, we are able to create visual supports, token boards, and data tracking sheets. Our behavior support team can provide coaching to parents regarding the use of these tools. These tools can be provided to parents to use in the home. Our behavior support team, led by Lynn Dudas, a board-certified behavior analyst, is available to meet with parents and guardians and students on an individual basis as well. Her office hours during the school year will be from 8:30 to 4:30 on Thursdays during the time that we are implementing virtual learning. Our behavior support team may be accessed directly through email by emailing behaviorsupport@oside.us. This email address will be live beginning Monday, August 10th, 2020. Next slide, please. Special ed assessments will continue. We will continue to assess students for their triennial and initial assessments. As we do so, we'll complete any portion of the assessment that does not require in-person interaction. This would include things like conducting interviews, completing rating scales, and reviewing existing records. If this provides enough information for us to have a thorough assessment, we will complete the full assessment in that manner and have an IEP meeting. If we determine that we still require in-person interaction to have a thorough assessment, we will need to postpone that portion of the assessment until health orders allow us to have in-person interaction. Next slide, please. IEP meetings will continue to be held virtually or telephonically. We will hold IEP meetings in accordance with our timelines. These include our annual and triennial IEP meetings as well as initial IEP meetings. Additionally, parents and guardians may request a meeting at any time throughout the school year. As we conduct IEP meetings, we will incorporate language that addresses the ways in which services are provided during an emergency situation such as the pandemic. IEP meetings held through Zoom have the capability of offering simultaneous interpretation as well. Next slide, please. Some parent support opportunities will include our continued parent-guardian partner panels, which will be held monthly. We will provide training related to behavioral interventions, use of communication devices, and interacting with online tools for learning. Additionally, through our partnership with TASK, parents may access additional training and support. Information for training is posted on the special ed website under the Parents tab, and we will continue to update that. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you. This summer, Dr. Veith, coordinator of English Language Learner Support Services, and the English Language Learner team of teachers and support staff had the opportunity to pilot English language development online lessons for students. And due to the hard work of the teachers and the English Language Learner staff, the results were impressive enough to push forward into implementing to support our English language learners this fall. Our English language learners will be provided with virtual learning support teachers who provide a supplementary support class option for students with live interactive lessons, activities, and support for students. We will provide students with designated and integrated ELD lessons from a rigorous ELD curriculum in order to continue to increase the levels of proficiency and reclassification for our English language learners. Now to Dr. Sparks.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. When schools closed in March, the first group of students that we reached out to were our students who identify as homeless or transitioning or in the foster youth system. These students were a priority in regards to ensuring that they had the necessary tools, access, and resources to pivot to online learning. This commitment remains the same today, and as we move into a virtual learning environment for the beginning of this school year, we will meet the needs of this student group, and we'll do so by having a support with a liaison at each site, daily connections with teachers, priority for Wi-Fi and devices, referrals to community-based organizations, and continued counseling by our counselors and OUSD. Now I'll pass it back to Dr. Lawrence to talk about some of our professional learning opportunities.
To prepare our staff for virtual learning, we have designed professional learning academies made to support all members of our learning community. We have begun this work by engaging our school administrators in learning focused on the utilization of online tools, course design, equity, and SEL work within an online learning environment. Teachers will receive 10 to 15 hours of training initially when they return next week. They will receive training in the areas of online learning pedagogy, course design, integration of online tools, and access to multiple resources. We have also planned such academies for our support staff. We will provide ongoing training opportunities that will be easily accessible through on-demand lessons and one-on-one coaching. We'll continue to use Alludo, Kite, and Nearpod to support our staff as we saw promise in its use in the spring as noted within this slide. Next slide. We have also planned parent and guardian academies that will launch within the first week of school. This training will consist of 6 modules along with virtual drop-in dates for one-on-one support. These opportunities will be made available through our virtual learning website and parent guardian website. This information will also be communicated through each school site. Next slide, please. Grace.
Grace or Jim, are you on this slide? I don't see Grace on, Jim, so do you want to speak to this slide?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jim, you're a little frozen.
Yes, program. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead and start from the beginning. You were just a little frozen.
Sorry.
No worries.
Our schedule for our students in the adult transition program will include daily instruction from 9 to 12 o'clock. The instruction will be focused on job skills, social communication, community participation, and any specific goals included in each student's IEP. From 1 to 3 o'clock daily, teachers will have time to check in with our adult students to ensure that they are working toward their goals, that they have access to all necessary materials, and are progressing through the curriculum. Students are also grouped in such a way for online learning that when they transition back to in-person learning, their groups will remain stable and consistent. Thank you.
Thank you. With the elementary schedule, Mrs. Graveline and I had the pleasure of working with a great group of teachers, support staff, and administrators in elementary and secondary work groups. These work group members voluntarily took time out of their summer vacation to engage in critical dialogue and work to create schedules that look into the consideration that was expressed by the concerns of students, parents, teachers, while also working to comply with SB 98 requirements. The state preschool schedule before you is provided with a 90-minute block of instruction. This provides us with the opportunity to support a morning and afternoon group of students. It should be also noted that the state is also developing more specific guidance for preschool instructional minutes. Next slide, please. The current schedule displayed reflects the elementary TK through 5 schedule. A common element in this schedule is that school will begin with a morning meeting at 8:20, where the principal will engage the school community in various positive activities. Instruction will formally begin at 8:30. However, the minimal instructional minutes vary between grade spans. For transitional K through kindergarten, the minimal instructional minutes are 180, which will result in school ending at TK at 12 p.m. For grades 1st through 3rd, there was a requirement of 230 minutes, allowing for school to end at 1 p.m. with an expanded nutrition break so that the end time is in alignment with grades 4 through 5, which have a required 240 minutes. The instructional blocks range from 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the grade level. However, it is important to understand that the instructional block does not mean that students are engaged online with the teacher for the whole block. There will be a mix of learning experiences within the block structures led by the teacher that will include live instruction along with possible small lessons, pre-recorded activities, and independent practice. Extended learning opportunities are built into each schedule for students with disabilities, English language learners, and any student needing additional support. Next slide, please. The K-8 schedule, which is displayed, supports our base schools, and it incorporates both the TK5 schedule and a secondary schedule. What is unique is that the secondary schedule on base will also begin at 8:30 to ensure that families can enter learning together and also make it easier to transition families together should we move to a hybrid schedule. Scholars will engage in 75-minute periods and engage in 3 periods a day in addition to an advisory period. Teachers, again, will structure the experiences to include within the period live instruction, independent practice, and office hours. However, this is not to be interpreted that students will engage in live online learning for the full 75 minutes within the period. Next slide, please. The middle school schedule has the middle school scholars will engage in 4 periods of learning each day. Each period is 65 minutes and will consist of live daily teacher engagement, which may include direct instruction, group facilitated learning, or small groups learning and independent practice. Students will begin again with a morning opening to engage in reflective learning activities, and instruction will begin formally at 8 a.m. Students will have access to attend after school office hours, intervention, extended learning activities, after school club activities, and more independent practice that is built into the end of the day. Next schedule, please. Our high school scholars will engage in a morning opening as well for inspiration and announcement of opportunities and action. Formal instruction will too begin at 8 a.m. Students will engage in 3 periods of learning with an advisory period to engage in deep learning experiences. Students will engage in 85 minutes of learning within the period. The period will include live teacher engagement along with the possibility of engaging in small group learning experiences, independent practice, assessment, and individual meeting time. Students at the end of the day have the opportunity to engage in enrichment, credit recovery, intervention, extended office hours, in addition to clubs and sports practice when it is permitted. Again, with each schedule, is it important to recognize that each learning block will be structured and have live interaction for a portion of the class period. Next slide, and thank you.
So as far as instructional technology goes, we have a project that began this week. It's ramping up called our 100% Internet Connectivity Project. And the mission is exactly what the project of the title is. We want to make sure that each and every student in OUSD has an internet connection and can access virtual learning. All households will be contacted to ensure that they have internet connectivity. This will be done through multiple mediums of survey, telephone outreach, and face-to-face contact if necessary. Staff is also going to assist to make sure that once a household determines, or we determine that a household does not have connectivity, that they'll be presented with several options to get their household connected. As far as student devices go, new Chromebooks are currently on order. The backlog worldwide is great right now, but we are in the queue, and those devices will take care of all 9 through 12 students. The fleet of Chromebooks we currently own are being evaluated and prepared to ensure they're reliable and deployable. We're also looking into the possibility of using CARES Act that we heard about a little bit earlier to expand greatly our number of Chromebooks and touch interface devices for our K2 students. And our primary objective with this is to get as close to one-to-one as we possibly can. Our technology service desk will continue to operate as it did after the closure. This service desk is available to all students, all staff, as well as parents and guardians for assistance in getting OUSD devices working, clearing account issues, making sure the devices connect to the household Wi-Fi, and general technical support for teaching and learning. So both technical and educational technology support. We have 2 telephone lines, an English line, the number is shown there, and a Spanish line that will be manned from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. There are a couple of websites that we maintain that are listed on the slide here, and they'll be consolidated into one website to make sure everything is accessible through one place. That will take place over the next couple of weeks.
We jumped ahead to CIF, but let's go ahead and do that. On July 20th, the CIF Commission announced a modified late start fall season for winter and fall sports, and that they will run concurrently, beginning in December unless otherwise indicated by health officials. Spring sports will also have a modified season with a commencement in March, again, based upon the health officials. We are currently offering optional sports day camps under the CIF return to play guidelines. Next slide, please. There we go. The last day of universal feeding will be on Thursday, August 6th. That's this Thursday, beginning the first week of school. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, meals will be distributed at the 10 sites indicated on the slide from noon to 1:30 to correspond with the meals or the lunch breaks on the scheduled slides earlier. Now that we are returning back to school, we no longer qualify for the universal feeding waiver, which allowed us to provide free meals to anyone under the age of 18. And beginning August 17th, we will revert back to only providing meals under the National School Lunch Program, which provides us to only provide meals for eligible free and reduced identified scholars. Those are those scholars that have submitted a free and reduced application and have been approved. Scholars must have their student ID card, and parents are allowed to pick up the meals for their child, provided that they have the student ID card. Parents and students may use the ID card from last year. For those scholars that are new to OUSD, class rosters will be provided at the meal distribution to ensure that we're identifying those scholars that are eligible for the meals. Next slide, please. And one more slide. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Moon. As this slide is indicated, going back to CIF again, this slide shows the fall sports proposed for the first day of practice. We're still waiting for guidance on the CIF regarding the cheer, but right now we are anticipating that our fall sports will begin in December. Next slide, please. And lastly, regarding the spring sports, this slide shows that the proposed first day of practice will begin in March 8th for soccer and March 29th for the other sports. And as you can imagine, our facilities will be very tight this year with multiple sports needing areas to practice. So we will have full flexibility and make sure that we're providing the best extent possible our facilities, in addition to ensuring that our facilities are maintained and cleaned. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sparks to introduce the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soto. So OUSD is working with our before and after school partners and providers to refer interested families who have completed a child care interest form to off-site licensed child care. We are working with guidance that we received, the guidance clarification that we received as of today. And while under the governor's July 17th order to only have virtual school in counties on the COVID-19 monitoring list, schools are not permitted to have children on site for any reason. Interested families have completed a child care interest form, and our student services team is finalizing plans to support our providers in working with licensed child care options in the city. Now I'll pass back to Dr. Lovey.
Thank you, Dr. Sparks. Mr. Moon, would you please refresh the slide decks, please? Slide 66, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are happy to share with you as our commitment to outreach to our families continues. Our site principals will invite all families via email tomorrow to back to school nights. These back to school nights will occur in day and evening meetings in virtual small groups. Middle school meetings will occur on August 11th, 2020. Elementary and K-8 schools will have their meetings on August 12th, 2020. High schools will have their meetings on Thursday, August 13th, and our Oceanside Unified Adult Transition Program will also have theirs on August 11th. These meetings will share the specific actions and approaches that each school site will take in implementing our virtual learning. Next slide, please. As we have spent quite a bit of time talking about our virtual learning tonight, we want to make sure that we provide you with an understanding of how the California July 17th orders impact school districts in San Diego County and across the state. Schools can reopen for in-person instruction when the county they are operating in has been off our monitoring list for 14 consecutive days. This order applies to charter schools, private schools, and public schools in the county. How this is measured is through the 5 indicators that are displayed on this slide. As of this time, our case rate in San Diego is above the threshold, which means that we are on the monitoring list. We are monitoring this data daily and being sure that we can find 14, that we are very aware of the 14 consecutive days so that we can reopen school in a manner that will, within a physical manner. Next slide, please. We are also happy to share with you the Oceanside Unified School District's Virtual Learning and Return to In-Person Instruction Guide. This guide is a guide for families, staff, and community to our overall plan for education of our students. This is a plan that has been designed and put forward in collaboration and cooperation with our collective bargaining groups, our parents' feedback, and our leaders' identified needs. This book, thanks to our communication department, will be easy to read and will be translated and available at the end of the week on our website. This will be a living document, and as we receive more information, we will update this document. Thank you, Board of Education, for this opportunity to share with you our plan that will be putting into place to support the students of Oceanside Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Appreciate all of the work that went into that and that presentation. This is a public hearing. We have, I think, a handful of speakers that wish to address the board, and we'll start with Ann calling out the first member who submitted. Ann?
Okay, we have 10 public comments on this item. The first speaker will be Lily Sanchez.
I will just remind for everyone that the time limit is 3 minutes, which I think you all know, and there's a clock that will start that, and you'll see it at the base of the screen there. And please address your comments to us. We're glad to hear them. Lily?
Lily, you're promoted to the panelist. You're free to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Lily. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
That's all right. We've done that too.
So when I was listening to the presentation, there wasn't a clear answer as to what you're waiting for to open schools. And it kind of sounded at the end that y'all are monitoring the list. Excuse me, the monitoring list. I guess you're reviewing that to see if we come off of it for the 14 consecutive days. And so I'm concerned that the district might want to open as soon as we hit that benchmark. And I just wanted to comment on the safety of children. In the last meeting, it was stated that no one under the age of 17 has died of COVID in California. And that unfortunately has changed. As of Friday, the California Department of Public Health announced the death of a teenage child. And there have been 3,259 children who have tested positive in this county. And that's over 10% of all confirmed cases. 62 of those children were so sick that they were hospitalized. There's also, I don't know if anybody has heard of the MIS-C, which is the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. This is a condition that can be serious and sometimes deadly. The CDC said that different body parts can become inflamed, including the heart, lungs, kidneys, brain, skin, eyes, or gastrointestinal organs. The CDC said that we do not yet know what causes MIS-C. However, we know that many children with MIS-C had the virus that causes COVID-19 or had been around someone with COVID-19. So just to clarify, these are children who might be mildly sick at first and then develop this syndrome. And there's also long-term effects, right? That most people have mild symptoms of COVID. We pretty much all know that. However, about 20% later become critically ill. This means that they experience cardiomyopathy, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and or neurological damage such as brain inflammation and stroke. And because the majority of people affected have been adults, the studies that focus on children are only just emerging right now. So we don't have enough data to say conclusively that children are going to be safe in a, even if it's a hybrid model. But one study did find that some children with COVID do develop serious heart damage. Again, this is not a majority of children, but you never know if it's going to be your child, right? And it's also very important to recognize that children are transmitters. Fox News reported on a coronavirus outbreak in Georgia. It was a camp back in June. There were 344 campers and staff that tested. 260 of those were positive, including 168 children. And as quoted in the article, the CDC stated that this case demonstrates efficient spread of the virus, quote, resulting in high attack rates among persons in all age groups, even with the use of recommended strategies to prevent.
I can't see time. Okay.
Sorry?
Thank you, Lily. Time's up. I appreciate those comments. We'll take them on board. We appreciate that. Next speaker.
Stephanie DeRochi.
Stephanie. No. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I just want to say I appreciate the plan that you guys have put together, and I can appreciate the opportunity to speak as well. I just wanted to throw out there just more some questions, honestly. I see the plan, but I feel like it's a little unrealistic, at least in my family. I mean, I have 4 children, all in 4 different grade levels. 2 of them are on IEPs. So I guess I'm just, where do I get more information on what do I do? Because working, I'm a full-time student. My husband's in the military. So I'm just curious, what do those families do? Also, with the special education services, so 2 of my kiddos, like I said, are on IEPs. My daughter's supposed to get 240 minutes a week in her classroom. Then she's supposed to have 30 minutes of counseling for 30 different sessions. And then she's also supposed to get 120 minutes weekly with aid in a class. My son, on the other hand, he gets speech services, 30 minutes, 55 times, and then special education, 120 minutes a week. During the distance learning, we really didn't get a lot of our services met, which was unfortunate because they're on the IEPs because they're already behind. So then when it comes to this online virtual learning, I just am curious, how does that improve? My one child who's he's going to be going in 1st grade. He was in kindergarten all year last year at Santa Margarita, and he fell behind. I mean, his teacher, who has a degree, was able to get him to learn 2 sight words out of 60. He can only count to so much. He's below average on reading, below average on writing. I, of course, am going to try as hard as I can, but I don't have a degree. So I'm wondering what services are there for parents who have concerns. Also wondering, online sometimes doesn't always work, especially for those kids who have special needs. Is there paper form for parents? I don't know. Those are just my things that I'm throwing out there. Like I said, I can appreciate the plan that you guys have put together, and for someone who has maybe one child and stays home, it'll work perfect. But for someone who has 4 kids on 4 different levels, 2 have special needs and have IEPs, what do those families do?
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Your time's about up. We appreciate that. We'll take that on board. The meetings that are going to be announced here shortly will be on our websites that the presentation noted. Next week with the principal is going to be your first place to start getting the detailed information, and we have our hearts go out with you to work through this with us. But we appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Joey Bercini.
Go ahead, Joe.
Joey, you there?
I am. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Great. I just wanted, can I just get a thumbs up from the board members that you guys can all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect.
Trust
Okay.
me, we can.
Okay, good. You can start my clock. Reason I asked for the thumbs up on whether or not you can hear me is you probably all know my name. I've been asking for the last 6 weeks for a plan for parents. Stephanie, if you're still listening, I just want to let you know my heart goes out to you, and I wish the board had a better answer for you. So since I feel like my questions haven't really been answered via board meetings, town hall meetings, and emails, I'd like to at least spend the next 2 minutes and 24 seconds hearing from the board on what they think working parents should do in order to keep their jobs securely and maintain teaching kids at home.
I mean, is that what you want to say, Joey? For your public input at this time? That's your question and that's your issue, and we'll take that on later on. All right.
Why are we going to take it on later on, though? I think this is the question that a lot of parents have been asking, and no one is answering the question. How am I supposed to keep my job when I have to manage a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old who's sitting next to me during my workday all day?
It's a challenge for society and the whole county right now that's in this position, and I can't solve that for you or have a debate with you right now on what your answer is, because I don't have it. Here's what we have to offer right now, Joey, as you understand, and it's not working for you. And all we can say is just move forward with that. Okay. Next speaker.
Cece Haffey.
Cece. That would be a better answer. You're right. My bad. I know. Cece. Next speaker.
Karen Placencia.
Karen.
Go ahead, Karen.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Karen Placencia, and I am with the Human Rights Council of Oceanside, but also speaking on behalf of my family, my little sister, nieces, and nephews who attend OUSD. So, hold on really quick. So I just want to say that as HRCO and speaking on behalf of my family for our community, we are convinced that public schools should not resume in-person instruction until the time when that has been deemed safe by public health experts and the broader scientific community. We believe that reopening public schools must adhere to public health science, and we reject recent recommendations issued by the politicized Centers for Disease Control, who changed their earlier guidelines after the Trump administration intervened because Trump considered the initial guidelines as too rough or too tough and expensive. Today, as you all know, the pandemic is worse than it was in March and April. In particular, the pandemic is more devastating to brown working class families in our neighborhoods. We believe that human lives must be the only priority during this global health crisis, and any considerations that place economic gains and returning to normal life, quote unquote, on equal terms as public health must be denounced before any public schools can reopen safely, as public health prioritizing public health, is most important, and it requires immediate nationalization of health for everybody, and that's something that we believe our district during this time must call for, is healthcare for everybody. We need nationalization of COVID-19 rapid testing services to support opening of our schools. We value our teachers and their labor, and as workers, we have to promote that they have the right to a safe workplace that will not put them and their families in danger. OUSD must support our teachers and show that we value their lives. And we just want to say also that the Education Secretary's call to open schools is an attack and an assault on working class people. And it's also, giving funding to schools that reopen for in-person learning is a way to fast-track the privatization of public education. And it calls for funding private schools that reopen in the fall. And it's just insane to force people to attend in-person instruction during a global pandemic. And we have to take into account that OUSD has a majority of brown working class students who are, because we are from working class families that cannot stay home, that we are being impacted worse by this pandemic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate the comments. Next speaker.
Mark Nelson.
Mark, are you with us?
Go ahead, Mark. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, Mark. Go ahead.
Just let me unmute my thing.
Yes.
Let's see how
we hear you fine.
Okay, here we go.
There you go. We see you.
Hi.
Welcome.
I've had the opportunity to speak with you, President Blessing, and I appreciate you taking my call. Actually, I was afraid you wouldn't, because I think you know my position on this. It's interesting to hear the different, I'm going to depart from what I planned on saying word for word, because I feel really badly about the people that are scared about returning to the school and fear that it's putting the lives of their children in danger. I sympathize greatly with those who have children with special needs. I've been in touch with over 27 families that have children with special needs that have approached me about bringing a lawsuit to help them fulfill the needs of their IEPs that are not being met during this pandemic. And then I've got an equal number of kids that are families with kids in the mainstream. I just want to speak about my two children in particular. There are two boys, 12 and 13, turning 13 and 14 this year, straight A students. The older boy was the Scholar Athlete of the Year last year and co-captain of the wrestling team this year. He was a National Junior Honor Society inductee last year, and my younger son would have been had he been allowed to complete the year and been graded on his classes. He was not inducted into that program was suspended due to the dropping of the grading. And my son, my older son, as he was cleaning out his locker, was told by his wrestling coach that he would have been, again, the Scholar Athlete of the Year had they graded. I'm sorry, I'm becoming a little emotional. But this pandemic has the closure of the schools physically. I do not believe is scientifically based. I disagree with the previous speakers that say that it is, and that it's. But I have seen the emotional, psychological, and educational deterioration of my sons right before my eyes. Their behavior has disintegrated. The lack of socialization with other kids and their teachers has greatly decreased their ability to deal with behavioral situations that they had no problem dealing with in the past. And I just think that opening our schools is the best thing for our children, and the needs of our children should be put at the highest priority. And I think it can be done safely for the teachers as well. And I'd just like to encourage all those listening to go to the website, openOurSchools.org. It's got excellent scientific information and ways to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Next speaker, Ann.
Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin, are you with us, McCarthy? You promoted him. Great. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
We'll get there.
Hello.
Hi, Kevin. We got you. Can you hear us?
Got me on a Zoom session.
We can hear you on the Zoom session. Go forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, why has the school board not proposed a realistic plan to have classroom education available for all students, and in particular K through 5? Let me explain what I mean by that. The last board meeting and in this board meeting, charts were displayed showing that the cost of in-classroom learning would be exorbitant, somewhere around 2 to 3 times the amount of regular classroom education. I'm wondering if that data was skewed by the assumptions predicating those projections, much like the original projections about the death rate in the US due to COVID-19, which predicted 2 to 2.5 million Americans would die. Just in this meeting, we were showing in-person, hybrid, and virtual learning. There's a serious flaw in these models. All parents would participate in, they would find acceptable or whatever the school board is recommending. It is apparent to me that the school board neglected to collect meaningful input from parents as they did with their workshop groups. Talk to a sampling of parents, you'll find that many parents feel that the in-classroom learning far outweighs the risk. A new plan should be drafted, taking into consideration that not all parents will send their kids back to classroom learning, which will reduce the requirements for the classroom learning environment. And considering the fact that the school board is required to submit a plan for the 2021 calendar year, and that there is no classroom or in-classroom plan for students to return back to their classrooms, then this would mean that the school board has in fact decided to conduct a virtual learning environment for the entire school year, completely disregarding the preference of parents and students. We need to conduct a survey to see how many parents in fact would send their kids to grades K through 5 and even higher grades. And if that survey returns an assessment that is over 50% who want to send their kids back to classroom education, then this should significantly affect the amount of classroom teacher resources required. The school board should immediately conduct a survey to determine which parents would send their kids back to classroom learning, and then direct the board to do a waiver, request a waiver. If you look at the data on parent-sponsored websites such as openschools.org, which has the latest county, Orange County, San Diego County, and California state data, it's clear that the school board and the county health department are ignoring vast quantities of data which show that school-age children are uniquely less impacted by the virus as proposed to recent influenza pandemics, where there were over 180 pediatric deaths, 200,000 pediatric hospitalizations. So if human life is your main concern, I want to ask parents, how many children are you willing to sacrifice to teenage suicide, domestic child abuse, or pedophiles who have been released by Gavin Newsom after he announced that 9 million children will be potentially at home.
Okay, wrap it up, Kevin. Time's up. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next speaker.
Todd Madison.
Go ahead, Todd.
Hi, guys. Of course, I'm Todd Madison, parent of Oceanside Unified Kids, candidate for school board this fall. It's great to see the effort the district has put into developing its learning continuity plan. The effort the district has put into gathering parent input on those changes is tremendous. With that, the CDE says the LCP is supposed to discuss how student learning continuity will be addressed during the 2021 school year, but most of what we've seen relates to the distance learning portion of that school year, which we hope is the smaller part of the year. I think every parent and teacher out there, hope that our county will meet the governor's criteria for allowing in-person school as soon as possible. We'd like to have a plan ready for that allows for that in ways that meet the CDE guidelines to be safe for kids, teachers, and other staff. No one, and I repeat, no one, is asking that we return to in-person school until it can be done with a plan that's safe for everyone. We haven't seen that plan, however. That was requested by the majority of parents, a board member, and the LCP template says it's our first priority, but no real plan has been presented. Perhaps the guide we'll see at the end of this week may illuminate some of that. I don't think it would be fair to teachers or kids to not have a well thought through and safe plan in place when we get there. We know keeping our kids and teachers safe will require a lot of thought, discussion, and board approval. There'll be details to be worked out. There'll be budgetary issues. Choices will have to be made. We know that is going to result in a lot of contentious conversations everywhere. It's not going to happen quickly or easily. And again, we most certainly did not want to rush into this in a way that might result in plans that are not safe for kids or teachers. Our district has now had several months to put this together. It apparently now has $14.9 million to use to fund that plan. It would have been nice to have seen that tonight, but we didn't. When will they do what the parents have clearly asked for and present that plan? As always, any parents listening to this who want to be part of that conversation are welcome to join the Oceanside Parent Network on Facebook. Search for Oceanside Parents, join the group to discuss. We welcome that discussion from all sides. And I would also recommend, as someone earlier said, anyone interested in joining parents who feel our schools should be open safely as soon as possible should go to openOurSchools.org as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Next speaker.
Lemmy. I just have the first name.
Okay. Lemmy. Are you finding that, Greg, anywhere to promote to the speakers box? Doesn't appear that Lemmy's present. Okay, the last speaker is Isaiah. Isaiah Briggs, perhaps. No, Isaiah. Okay. Well, I'll close that portion of the public hearing and sorry. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Isaiah.
Isaiah, go ahead. Nice.
Go ahead.
I was getting worried for a second. Sorry, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Go forward. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. So no, I'm just, a concerned resident of Oceanside. I have people, loved ones here that are attending OUSD, and I would just like to reiterate that we need to take the approach that would 100% minimize risk as much as humanly possible. Let me see, just one moment. Yeah, just to take a step back and just see where we're at in the midst of this lethal pandemic. We've sustained 3 times as many casualties in approximately 4 to 5 months as the U.S. sustained in a decade of fighting in Vietnam. And, the coronavirus, like the conservative estimates, I've been doing some research, and my brother is a pediatrician in Philadelphia working at CHOP. And by conservative estimates, the literature is saying that this is 66 times more lethal than the flu. And while, children might not be symptomatically impacted, they can 100% be carriers and be transmitting this to the community because they're going home to their parents, to their grandparents. And I think that, it's pretty obvious that schools are the perfect petri dish for, even if we took a hybrid learning approach, I love kids, but you cannot trust them to be following guidelines to the T. And especially in times like these, that we need to be making every single precaution to make sure that we are preserving life over everything. And my heart, goes out to all the working class people who are concerned, and I resonate with that struggle and want to be in solidarity with it. But at the end of the day, I feel like we need to prioritize the lives of our community members over any grades or accomplishments that might be achieved in this upcoming year. So yeah, I just feel like anything that wasn't the virtual approach would definitely be negligent and reckless and be putting our whole community at risk, and want to just say that for the record. And in terms of just reopening, I do agree that this needs to be something that is meticulously planned. Like plan A, B, C, etc. We need to make sure that, the community is very involved in this entire process, make sure that all the voices are being heard. And it's awesome to kind of hear that you guys are already at work doing that and have done some work in understanding how to best address this issue. But, I'm just wondering, like, so many questions. What will trigger in-person teaching? When will it close? It's going to be, potential back and forth, because I know, the New York Times reported that schools in Indiana, when they reopened, they had to shut down just hours into the first day. And, what is it? The superintendent said, and I quote, that they knew it was going to be a win, not an if. So it's just a matter of time until we have to go back. And I think having parents having to deal with that back and forth is going to be also detrimental to, any flow of work and family life. So, yeah, I just find it that we all agree as a community that virtual distancing is not ideal. There's better, this is not something that we want, but it's something that we need to do. And I just want to say, the U.S. has the highest number of cases with 4.7 million. And with California experiencing a resurgence, we need to be absolutely 100% on top of things if we're ever going to put our community at risk. So I appreciate you guys giving me that time.
Thank you, Isaiah. Appreciate your comments. And is that it then? We didn't find Lemmy anywhere, Greg? All right. Well, with that, I will close the public input portion of this hearing item and move it to any discussion or questions that the board members may have of staff, or any response or discussion points that staff wants to share as we move forward with this item. Excellent work, by the way. The virtual presentation and is a challenge to do that. There's no question about it. From you folks at home, I'm sure it's a challenge to look and see all those charts. We do have them on our website, and you can take advantage of looking at those too. But appreciate the work that staff did to put this together, and it lays out the framework for where we're moving forward with right now and puts it in its proper context. So I appreciate that.
Well, I have a few comments and questions.
Safety.
That's
Yeah.
all right.
Go for it.
I just want to say I'm glad we're having public comment, and I'm glad to see we have almost 400 people on right now. I'm a parent of a student, and I struggle with the same things that Joey does. I feel for Stephanie. I don't have 4 children. I mean, this is tough. It's not only inconvenient, it's really scary how we support our students and their social, emotional, and our little COVID bubbles. I mean, I feel for all the parents, but just know you have 3 parents on your school board. We're all feeling the same pain, and we have kids at different ages. So I kind of would like to hear a little bit more, and I know they touched on it. Mercedes, Dr. Levy touched on it about next week. There's going to be a plan about the reopening of schools, because I know we've covered hybrid. I understand in 14 days, if we get off the monitoring list, which would be nice, that we will have a transition plan to go back into. And I know I just want to let the parents know these guidelines are changing daily. Just when you think you know what you're going to do, they change the whole things, and they change the rules and the guidelines, and then we have to go back to the drawing board. So it keeps people really busy in their bandwidth when we, have a lot of things to focus on. So Mercedes, will you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Begin. We will have the guide that will be put forward. And so the guide is really divided into 2 different parts. The first part is the instructional part that outlines all of our instructional resources that will be available during virtual learning. And remember that virtual learning has been designed to reflect what we would do in person. So the governor's mandate is that virtual learning and hybrid learning is tightly aligned to what would happen in in-person learning. So that's the first part. So that first part of the booklet will explain everything we talked about today, including our services, resources for students who are experiencing sadness, social emotional learning, ways to get help on your technology. All these things are going to be contained within this document, and it'll be available in Spanish and in English. We also have a second part of the document, and that document talks about the way that we can reduce risk to entering back into in-person school. This includes specific protocols for hand washing, symptom checking, and cleaning protocols. Earlier in this board meeting, we talked about the sanitation backpacks that will allow us to quickly sanitize entire rooms so that we can reduce risk. We also have been working with the County Department of Public Health to, again, have a deeper understanding of the metrics of how to return to in-person learning when it is low risk. And this includes that 14-day of a trend that will be a downward trend in the number of cases that we have, that we ensure we have contact tracing and testing in our community, and at times even within our organization. So all of these things are being developed. And what we know is that the guidance is continuing to be developed and refined every single day, as you saw in the timeline. And as these questions come forward, and I encourage people listening to reach out to your legislators, because as they reach out, we do get more guidance. So we appreciate that.
Thanks for that one. And I'll turn it over to another board member.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Stacy. Anybody else at the moment? Raquel? Eleanor?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff for giving us a very detailed presentation in terms of how we will progress with opening school. What can I say? You know, like we're in a pandemic. You know, we have to look at what's the common good, what's good for everyone. My heart goes out to parents, to working parents, to parents of students with special needs, and just to quote unquote regular students and those parents of those regular students. It's, you know, it's heartbreaking, you know, to realize that, as one parent said, his son could have been the Scholastic Athlete of the Year. I would propose that we go ahead and give that student that honor. You know, if it truly is the Scholastic Athlete of the Year, give it to him. Simple as that. We're very supportive in terms of staff, of our teachers, of our CSEA workers, and you know we're going to move forward. We're going to, you know, we're going to conquer this, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Eric, Raquel?
I have a long list of things. I do want to thank everybody that did work to get all this together. I know that right now the main thing, and our parents, please understand that right now putting everything together and getting everything out to you all, showing you that the virtual part of it is the priority right now, because that's what we're doing right now at this moment. Working through the book and getting everything else of what the next steps and what the triggers are going to be, that's the next step. But right now, please understand and know that we are having to currently show you and everybody understand that safety is above all and everything for everybody, for our staff, our teachers, our students, for all of our families in our community. And so that is the priority over anything, especially being a parent in our district and having that student that needs to have that interaction, needs to have that being able to communicate with his fellow classmates and stuff. that becomes difficult and when we're having to do everything virtually. So we're looking for different ways. As a parent, I'm looking for different ways for him to be able to interact and do those things, and asking principals and teachers, for help in that way to be able to help him. So please know that we're feeling everything that you're going through. We are understanding, we are living it with you. Also, just the biggest thing right now is safety for everybody across the line, no matter what it is that we're going through, is it's virtually, when and if we're able to go back in to our classrooms, that it be safe for everyone overall, for just as a priority over everything and anything that we're looking at, is the main thing that we need to look at across the line. There's a whole lot. I know that for me, I don't know if Mercedes, if you can answer this for me, because I look at our students, like Eleanor was the same, as others was just saying, that that student that works so hard to be able to achieve, and we look at our junior National Honor Society students also, that because they weren't presented and they didn't get those things because they did work hard for those things, and they've worked all year to be able to receive those accolades, that if there's something that we can do to be able to honor those students, then we really actually need to look at being able to do that. For our students that are GATE students, and or that don't have the, I picked up my stuff for my son today, and being a GATE student, I know that he already came home and he was already doing the math packet, and he was like, okay, I'm already done with the packet. I'm like, yeah, you're not supposed to start that already, but those are the students that we need to also focus on, and how we're going to support them, and what do we do. And I know that it goes back to my principal and going back to my teachers, but they're going to be so inundated with so many other things that we need to be able to know. I want to know how I can support not only my son, but other students within our district that have those needs. So do we have something in place to be able to do that?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Alvarez. First of all, we will definitely look into the honors that over in the spring. So thank you to Ms. Evans and Ms. Alvarez for that. We'll look at that as our team. Second of all, about our students who are gifted and talented, we're actually very fortunate in our district that the president of the California Gifted Association is a teacher in our district, Ms. Bussey, and she and I have been meeting about how we can work to ensure that our students are challenged through depth and complexity and the GATE icons. So one of the things that she and I have talked about is also how can we provide supports to families to understand gifted students, how they experience the world, both through a social and emotional lens, and also how can we continue to challenge them to make sure that they can reach their potential. So we have specific supports for parents that we're putting in place on specific topics, and we'll definitely add that to topics for parent education about how to help parents to guide their children both socially, emotionally, and academically when they are gifted and talented.
Mercedes, will you also talk about the temporary teachers that we're hiring to support kids beyond just having tutors, please?
Yes, exactly. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Vitale. We also have realized that it's essential to have teachers available for our students that can be accessible, so that our teachers who are our contract teachers are not having excessive workload. So what we have in place is we are looking to hire some teachers, credentialed teachers, who would be available via telephone and internet access to support students in math and science and other content area as they're working, so that children will have someone to go to for support other than their families when they run into those roadblocks. In addition to that, those teachers will be assigned specific students who are at promise. Those are our students who are homeless and foster youth, and our students who are English learners, and also students who we've identified may be in crisis. They will have specific caseloads that they will reach out to these students to help them to facilitate their learning, find out what services can be there for them, and also connect them with community resources and, of course, our own counseling. So we feel that this will be an approach that will provide, just like our tech call-in systems, where it'll be an on-demand opportunity that we would have that same kind of teacher support for our students when it comes into the fall. And those teachers would be for the whole year and be able to provide intervention support as we move forward.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The temporary teachers, what's the scope? How many teachers are we looking to hire for that kind of position?
Right now, we're investigating. We're looking at our data. What we would like to do is identify 2 teachers who would be single subject mathematics teachers, because we know that's an area that is a high need area. And then we're looking at somewhere between maybe about 3 more teachers that would be in, maybe 1 in science and then generalists who would be able to support. So we're looking at about 5, which would be a large investment of our CARES money, but we think it's highly worth it to provide. And these teachers would work actually after the core instructional time from the schedules so that they could provide support. This would not replace the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher would guide the work, set the instruction, but these would be additional supports later in the day, which we feel would be helpful to students as they work through their independent learning and practice.
So if we're hiring them with CARES money, that's money that can be spent throughout the year, or is that due by the 30th of December?
I'm not, Mr. Joyce, I believe we can spend it throughout the year. So I don't know specifically on that piece, but yes, they would be funded through specific targeted COVID-19 monies.
And these positions, while they're credentialed teachers, are not ongoing expenditures. They're temporary. They're going to be placed on temporary contracts. So they'll just be for the year, hopefully, that we're in virtual learning or the semester. We'll offer them a year's contract because that's more attractive and we're likely to get better candidates because we want math credentialed people for those math spots. But it is just a one-time expenditure.
So I would actually like to speak on that because that reaches in a bunch of the questions I had. So you said that they would also be supporting at Promise students and other students that are identified English learner students. That's a lot of students, and 3 teachers beyond the 2 that are math. I know it's a big expenditure. I would like to try and gain some kind of consensus on investing further, even if it was temporary just to December. I know that that's not ideal, but it's not like districts are hiring a whole bunch of extra teachers right now. I mean, maybe they are doing the same similar temporary teacher things too, but I think we should maybe look beyond that, especially if we're looking at heightened social emotional needs. A lot of these students are going to need a contact that's not just outside of the time that the school day, because there are large pockets of the day, like the lunch, the office hours, and possibly times during their instructional block that they're not one-to-one with their teacher, that they would need that extra support of another teacher to guide them. And like I said, that the relationship is really the number one thing that we're looking to build, because we want the kids to want to be in their classrooms, and they're going to want to be there if they know somebody's invested in them being there. So I'm just going to put it out to our group to think about, maybe it's not temporary teachers that we're looking to invest more in. Maybe it's counselors, maybe getting more counselors into the elementary schools on a temporary basis until maybe we're back in school session. But people are really going to be the answer to getting our kids engaged and hooked into being with us through the distance learning time, which is very difficult. So I just want to put that out to maybe thinking about for our revision and for the final adoption in September.
We'll definitely look into additional teachers, one-time expenditures for a year as a temporary, and potentially counselors as well. I'm going to give Dr. McAteer a little stall time here because I'm not sure he's still here, even though his wonderful picture is still there. There he is. We're working on a job description. I'm not quite certain if the jobs have flown yet. Dr. McAteer, I'm wondering if you can give us an update on the writing of those job descriptions, the flying of those positions, and increasing the amount. Board Member Joyce, at this point won't be an issue because we do have the funding for that. We just want to reiterate that these are all one-time, non-ongoing expenditures because once this money is all one time, and we do anticipate fiscal issues, as we learned previously in our budget presentation. So we are able to invest in one-time expenditures. But Todd, will you give us just an update on that?
Yeah, we've done some work on this. We've created a new job description as well. And the posting is ready for EdJoin. We're ready to push the send button. Part of it is to wait for important milestones like tonight's board meeting to make sure things are going as planned before we publicize positions. But it's queued up and ready to go. I know I've heard some feedback from principals. They're interested in this model as well. And I know that it covers a variety of needs, including some of our at-promise students, as well as we're anticipating that support for families and students during those afternoon, evening hours to help support the learning that took place in the morning. So there's not a set number. We do, have some of that funding we can tap into, and I think that once we pull kind of the brain power from all the different departments together, we can maybe come up with an analysis that would better gauge what that demand might be and do the hiring. We can post it now and not put a set number, so we can just start attracting interest and creating the pool of candidates and get ready so that's in place as soon as we need it to start when school opens.
The other piece of that is attracting bilingual candidates. I know that's a big piece of, if at all, that could be included as a priority.
Yeah, it's great to have. We usually put that on the applications always as desirable qualities to have. That helps broaden the ability and impact for them to work with our families and students.
I would support what Eric was saying there, and also on the piece beyond the teachers, but is there potential to expand our contracts with like Palomar Counseling if we need to, or something of that nature once we get a handle on the need that's out there? It's another consideration for staff. Yeah.
Go, Dr. Levy. I'll go after you. You go.
Mr. Blessing, we actually have been in very good and close contact with a variety of providers that have been serving us. So our after-school providers that we've worked with, they will be able to activate virtually to provide additional virtual support as soon as the core instructional day schedule is over. So we are asking our providers to open Zoom rooms that will be able to be drop-in to help with homework, just like they would do in the real life situation, in the real life or in the real world. We have Palomar Counseling. We have our also Wellness Together, which is grant funded that provides licensed clinical social workers, I believe, to provide mental health. They've had excellent response, and they are looking to expand their services to us. They were running what they have found. We went to Dr. Sparks and I had a meeting with them. And they said that by moving to virtual learning, they found that many students stayed with them for their one-on-one counseling. They did have some, but what they found was an added benefit is that with working with young children on counseling, there's a lot of time walking children back and forth to their classroom. And what they found without having to do that, being able to move from one telephone conference or virtual conference, they've actually been able to increase their services by 25%. 25% more students have been able to be served in this model. So we're going to see a growth right there. And that is a grant funded that has been a gift to our district, and we're going to continue to work with them. So we're looking at ways to leverage our employees in ways that will provide support. And
Dr.
our partners.
Sparks, I believe you have some additional information that you'd like to share with us around supports as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for having us be part of the conversation. We've had a partnership with Vista Community Clinic this past year where we have worked with a couple of their licensed clinical social workers. We had one full-time last year who supported two of our campuses, primarily our elementary campuses. And this year, we will have access to two full-time licensed clinical social workers who, because they're working in a remote environment, they'll be able to span their services across schools based on need rather than just be assigned to one or two schools. So that's an additional support that we'll be getting starting in the fall.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jordy. And the key is going to be to get our parents connected up to those resources when they start connecting back up with the schools and the principals in the next couple of weeks. So that's wonderful. Any other comments or questions for staff? Eleanor, Raquel, did you have any more? Stacy? Eric, Raquel, looking.
I'll go.
Yeah, Eric.
Okay, so a big concern with parents was learning new technology, and I saw there was a module. I just want to plant a flag. I know it was mentioned. I think that we have a lot of good data. What we don't have data is what we don't know is what we don't know. So what's outside of the realm of who respond to these surveys are likely to be less connected families, more having to work more right now. All of the families that would need more support in getting connected are going to be the ones that didn't respond to the surveys. So we know, I just want to talk it through, that we know our data underrepresents those families. And so I want to make sure that we're thinking at the beginning of this year, investing really hard in getting those families not just connected to the internet, but connected to the instructors and the way that they're going to communicate with the district right from the bat. We're going to have this wonderful document, but it's going to be on the website, right? So there's just a lot of our information comes via the web, and I just want to kind of hear about how we're reaching out to families that we're not hearing from right off the bat. I'm not sure.
Mr.
Thank
Jennings, do you
you.
want to address, in addition to what you say, Dr. Levy, Mr. Jennings, do you want to address how we track electronic communications to ensure that we're hitting all households after whatever Dr. Levy says, please?
So, Mr. Joyce, thank you for that feedback. We definitely keep that in mind at all times. Last spring, we, under the leadership of Dr. Sparks and the assistant principals and principals at our school sites, we started the Contacted, Connected, and Wellness, where we made sure that we could find our students and talk to them. And at times we were hand delivering and hand coaching, or hand delivering devices and coaching families one-on-one with social distancing, outdoors, masks, all of the safety precautions. But that was really important. And we got to the point where even missing one student was too much. We got down to the point where we've only missed 15 students that we were not able to identify. That was a huge effort led by our principals, led by our assistant principals, to make sure that we were connecting. And we plan on keeping that same type of commitment that is going to continue. In addition to that, I also did some research from the Pew Research Center. In February of 2019, they did a study on smartphone owning. And across the nation, 81% of all adults have a smartphone. When you look at adults 18 to 29, it's 96% of all Americans own a smartphone. And in the age range of 30 to 49, it's 92%. That percentage drops with age and also with income level. But among Americans with incomes below $30,000 per year, it's 72% smartphone ownership. So we find that this has become a great tool. And what we found from the 1,000 people who participated in our small group meetings, many families shared with us, our Spanish-speaking families, that this has actually empowered them because they've learned to use Zoom. We've had great numbers of people coming to, larger numbers coming to our virtual meetings than we had into our in-person meetings when we were on Zoom. So we think that this is a way that we can actually really transform and increase parent participation. But to your point, exactly, we don't know about those that we don't meet, but we are making every effort, if we can, to seek people out and to address them and to bring them on. And with that, I know Mr. Jennings has more to say about that.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Levy. Good evening, board, President Blessing, Dr. Vitale, members of the community on the call. We appreciate you being here. I really appreciate being able to speak to this question even. Mr. Joyce, you are absolutely spot on with the deep necessity to continue our efforts to reach all of our families at the level that they receive communication. We do have a process in place for correcting bad numbers and bad emails in our system. In fact, just this morning, we reviewed that process with our secretaries across our school district just this morning, about 8:30. We reviewed that process. The information is only as good as the parents, effort to keep that information updated in the Aries Parent Portal. So any of our parents listening right now, I want to stress how important it is. Make sure that your information and data is up to date and current in our Aries Parent Portal. That information that gets updated nightly into our district communication system. Blackboard is the system that we use across the district, and there's nothing parents have to do to enroll in that service. Teachers, principals, district administration can email, text, and send phone calls home very simply, and there's nothing parents have to do to register for that or download any apps, nothing. It works really well as long as the data in Aries is up to date and current. The process that we use as a district is Blackboard does notify us when we send out messages if emails get bounced back or if phone calls don't go through. We have deep analytics on the back end, which is fantastic. And we worked really hard with staff last year to identify any families that were missing phone numbers or had bad phone numbers. Maybe they were disconnected, maybe they moved, or their email addresses were inaccurate. And we had schools actually competing with each other to get down to 0. And we did get really close. We had a couple of schools get down to just 2 or 3, maybe a small handful of numbers or email addresses that were incorrect. Now we roll over into a new school year. Many things have changed over the summer. We're going to have to begin that work anew. Not starting over from 0, of course, because we put a lot of work into that. But a lot of things happen over the summer and change. So our staff will have to continue focusing on reaching out to those families that don't have email addresses and don't have phone numbers that are good or valid in the system. We also saw a great opportunity as we went into COVID. And I think, I hope the board has seen the effort. We've used the opportunity here to start reaching out to families more via text. I would attribute some of our recent uptick in participation in our district and community meetings that we would have otherwise seen low to a couple of things. As Dr. Levy pointed out, absolutely that families are becoming more proficient at online resources that we have like Zoom. Also, we're reaching out now directly and it pings their cell phone. All they have to do is open that text up, click the link to join the Zoom call, and they're off to the races. So we're utilizing the tools as best that we can and our websites to keep our families engaged. We are looking at some new things that are going to be rolling out next year for next school year as well that will hopefully increase and deepen our engagement, especially in our Spanish-speaking community. So while there have been instances of outdated information, there is a process in place that staff works through to correct that bad information. And as much as our parents can go in and make sure that their data in Aries is correct, that helps a lot. Trying to think, I think I about covered all that.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Matthew, on that note, with the communicating to our families and sending the text messages and everything out to them, now and doing the Blackboard, now is that something that's across the board through the district that everybody's meeting? So we have families that have children in multiple schools. They're going to get everything through Blackboard. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the district supported standard, which is Blackboard. It is the only district supported communication system platform that we use for school to home or district to home communication. And it's significant because teachers don't need to do anything to set up their class rosters. It's all done automatically. Periods are all set up automatically. No information, like we're in distance learning right now, right? If a teacher sends out a phone call, it doesn't share their personal number. It's all through the system, all through Blackboard. And then it has those deep analytics on the back end so that we can see where our inefficiencies are and work on those. So yes, the goal would be to reduce any fragmentation and reliance on outside systems and solely rely on the district supported platform, which is Blackboard at this time.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Before you leave,
Eric.
our kinder parents, when do they get rolled into the system and start getting those wonderful text messages?
That's a great question, Mr. Joyce. And I think maybe even Greg Moon can chime in here, but I believe the first opportunity staff has had to begin the rollover process was today. So we needed staff to come back and return from summer break. I believe, if I understand it correctly, the first opportunity that staff was back to do that rollover process was actually, in fact, today. Dr. Sparks is giving me the thumbs up on that one.
Yes, it'll happen over the course of this week. So we believe, Jordy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but by the end of the day, Friday, all of those new enrollees should be receiving those amazing text messages.
Yeah.
Jordy, anything to add?
No, that's correct. Just the rollover and the import and completing the enrollment process has begun at sites today, and that includes our incoming kindergartners.
Great.
Well, thank you all. Eleanor, yeah? Do you have any questions? Any more questions for these guys? Okay. Anybody else? Eric, yeah. Floor is yours.
Thanks to everybody for being patient. This is a big, important thing, and we're going to look to approve it next month, so we're going to make sure we get it right. I am one of those parents who's working full-time and going to have a kinder. So just like some of the parent concerns we heard, I honestly do not know what I'm going to do in a couple of weeks. It's crazy. But I definitely understand. So in that vein, for our parents, what kind of minimum expectations are we looking for from our teachers as far as communication goes? Because when I look at the schedule for elementary, there are the two main blocks of instructional blocks. Some of that is going to be in-person or live instruction, asynchronous, synchronous, and some of it's going to be small groups, some of it's going to be independent practice, some of it will be ELD and SPED support. So are we looking for our teachers to communicate with our parents about a weekly schedule? Are we looking for them to communicate more tighter than that, less tighter than that? Like, what can I expect as a parent walking in? And I know that that's going to change because your instructional groupings change over time, but will our teachers be reaching out with weekly schedules for their instructional blocks?
So, Mr. Joyce, we believe in our district that the teachers have expertise and can guide that. So, through our collaborative process, each individual teacher will reach out to you and explain the process. What we will have is the Seesaw platform for our kinders. And I know that our kindergarten teachers particularly have been working very diligently to find ways to reach out to our kindergarten families. They're all of our teachers are very dedicated, and they're figuring that out as they go. So the first step is your principal will talk about the school level approach. And then when the first day of school comes around, the teachers will also be preparing that. So each individual teacher expertise and guidance. In addition, as a district, we've provided resources for parents and some pacing guides that teachers can use to help guide their work. So each individual teacher will communicate with their class about that.
Is there a minimum amount of live instruction that we're expecting the teachers to deliver each day? Is it like, can I expect my teacher to be working with their class for 30 minutes at least live instruction? I know that great virtual teaching is a mixture of live instruction and all the other wonderful tools that you can put together, especially to make it really engaging. Are we expecting small group work to be a weekly thing for students in elementary school, or is it going to be a daily thing for students in elementary school? Sorry, that was two questions.
Yeah, so there will be daily interaction between the teacher and the students. But again, we do not have it delineated out in a specific amount of time.
Is small group lesson work a requirement across grade levels? So will I expect that my son will be in a small group during the week at some point with the teacher?
So the schedules that we put together were part of our 180 teachers who've gotten together, and this is the recommended approach that they have put together. And so depending on once we've done our assessments through our iReady, our panorama, they will start to group the students, and depending on the students' needs and the assessments and the teacher's expertise, those groups will be fluid. So some of the students may receive more small group instruction based on their assessments and needs, and others would receive fewer sessions. But every student will receive the same rigorous content and standards and the same time for that direct instruction. Especially with the smaller students, what we know from working with our preschool teachers and what we know from the spring, that small group instruction is definitely going to be important as we start to approach this.
Okay. All right. I as a teacher and a parent, I would like to advocate for thinking about including that as something that scheduling a small group time for kids. It's hard to imagine students getting enough instruction with a whole group without getting some kind of small group each week. That's really hard for me to imagine, especially when you're building the building blocks of reading. I mean, the building blocks of reading are like you go whole group lesson with 24 kinders. More power to you, kinder teachers. I don't know how you do it on a regular basis. You're going to do awesome, and I have no doubt in your abilities. But I know that it's essential. So I would like to just put a flag in our planning for making sure that that's prioritized, even if it's site-based level. But I also want to think about the variance between site to site and making sure that students are getting enough of that individualized or small group instruction, which is essentially individualized. So I know that that's not really anything that I'm asking for an answer on, but I am advocating for it in our group because it's essential to the students making progress, especially in reading.
Dr. Lawrence, did you have something you wanted to add to that? I thought I saw you raise your hand. If not, that's okay.
I was just going to add that as part of the teacher planning that will be happening next week is that when the teachers come back in grade levels and in department levels, this is part of the work that they will determine so that there's consistency amongst grade levels of how that structure will look like and how that will build. And that will be ongoing work that will happen at each school site and within each department so that there is consistency within grade levels or content areas so that the structure is there in such a way that there is some consistency. So that will be part of the work that will be with the teacher academies next week.
Are they doing that work district-wide as an academy, or is it site-by-site?
They will be engaging in that by elementary levels, high school, secondary levels will engage in academies, and then they will disperse into planning time at the site levels to do that.
That's tremendous. Thank you. That'll be really helpful.
So I can follow that as not being the teacher. What you're basically saying, Eric, is the teacher's going to be, what Dr. Lawrence and Dr. Lovey said, is going to be working that out the next week or two if they come back. And then is that what you want to report back to us, what those time frames are, or if there are any fixed points? Is that what you're looking to put into the plan precisely? Or I'm trying to understand where you're going. I appreciate it. I don't have the expertise to dictate that from my standpoint, but I know the teachers are going to be working on that.
I think that Eric is really trying to make sure that all the teachers, no matter what grade level, are using best practices around distance learning, which is new to everybody a lot of times. So it makes me feel better to know that they're doing professional learning, that they're planning together with their grade level teams, that they're going to continue their professional learning communities to constantly refine what they're doing. I don't want to define how many minutes to do synchronous or asynchronous because we know the topics are different, the students are different, the groupings. I leave that up to the professionals, but I'm glad to hear that they're coming together to really look at it and then constantly refine it.
Yeah, I don't want to define a specific limit. I do think there is a reasonable expectation of a floor. So, I mean, yeah. Okay. So, and that's the functional schedule, stable. Sorry.
Well, he's thinking on it. I'll give him some wait time. I'm just kidding. I really want to go out to the parent that spoke, Stephanie, with being in the military, having to work, having 2 young children that are receiving special ed services. I really want us to look at, as a district, thinking outside the box, how we can provide extra additional support to those families that are in that type of situation. I'm not in that situation. I have 1 child. And that's already a handful. So I look at how can we communicate with those families and what we can do to help them through this time, because we heard from a couple board meetings ago that were in a similar situation. So I would like us to think outside the box, what we can do to support them.
So I would definitely like to back that up too. And that's when we talk about hiring personnel. The amount of the way to service students in a classroom, especially in the elementary classroom, that's just because that's what I know. From a special ed perspective, it takes a highly structured calendar and collaboration with instructional staff and making sure that they're all competent on all the things that we're working through, making sure that they have the technology, that they have the tools, they have access to the grades and assignments. So all of that is a really big ask of our teachers. So I want us to be really deliberate with our caseload management and looking at what we're asking our special ed staff to do, because they're going to be managing all these other teachers who are now also learning to do virtual learning, and they're also going to be trying to find a way to make their kids have access to that curriculum, which is not something that we, frankly, we're all trained to do. So I just want us to take a flag in that to make sure that we're not overburdening the special education staff. And our students with special needs that have the moderate severe needs especially, and behavioral needs, they're going to be, their families are going to need additional support, because accessing a virtual environment when you have behavioral challenges is almost undoable. So I just want to ask that we look at any kind of front-loading training. I saw that we'd have a monthly training for families with students with special needs. I think we want to front load more than that at the very beginning. So anyway, that's just something to stick a flag in.
So I do have another question now that we're talking about this. We're talking a lot about the teachers and the schedules. And so we don't have students on campus right now because it's not safe. What are we catching up, having our classified staff, our maintenance people, our instructional aides? How are they going to be working during this time of distance learning?
Depends on the classification you're talking about. And Shannon and Todd, I know you're working on some specifics around that. But with our teachers, we've given them the opportunity, if they would like to teach from their classrooms, they certainly may do that. They're not required to do that. But there might be some materials that they want to have access to. We're working through some of our other classified positions to figure out the best way that, depending on what they're doing, if they support students, the best way to do that. The guidance is if you can work in a remote way, that is what the guidance is suggesting that we do. Maintenance workers can't work in a remote way. Custodians can't work in a remote way. Some classified positions, if people need access to telephones, computers, internet, all of those kinds of things, and they don't have that at home, we're providing that access at school. So it's really varied. Dr. McAteer sent a letter to all employees. I don't know what date it is. It's
4th.
I think you sent that Monday or Friday, Todd, delineating what everyone needed to do to report to her. I apologize, I don't know what day it is, but it's every day is like a new day. So anything you want to add to that, Todd?
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. No, I think that's a good start. We did send out a letter to all of our classified employees with their return dates so that they know to report back to work, along with some information regarding, leave requests, and so that they can access that if they need it. We are working out a plan, and we've had one informal discussion with CSCA leadership to talk about the challenge about each, family group in that association that has different responsibilities and how they can work in this virtual environment. Some have better opportunities than other, where they can actually get their work done remotely. Others really require that in-person connection with students, and so it's a little bit harder to figure out, a work plan for them. We've had some discussions, so I can't really say too much more about that now since we're in kind of creating this MOU and discussion with them currently. But we're in agreement that we would like people to be safe, have flexibility and options where available, and then provide work also to help support the different models and plans that we have. So we have some ideas. We're currently working on that. We're going to meet with them again at the end of this week.
Thank you.
One more.
Yeah.
So hands-on materials. That was like 54% of our families that responded. So that was a big, it wasn't just our families. I think that was everyone. So hands-on materials is a big ask. Everybody's asking for it. There's a reason, because you're sitting at a computer all day. If anyone who's been in Zoom meetings all day know that you go cross-eyed and exhausted, and there's a whole different type of tired that you deal with. Now we're talking about children doing it. So hands-on materials are a huge piece of what we should be looking at. I saw that it's mentioned. I saw that it's talked about. I'm worried about 3 to 4 weeks being the expectation for getting that stuff out. I know there are teachers that plan really well and can do a month of planning and get the right materials for all that all squared. But I am concerned because I am not the teacher that does that very well. And I tend to like to change plans almost, every other day. So I'm worried about them. Are they going to have the ability to do that more frequently than 3 to 4 weeks?
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. I did misspeak. We are actually starting with materials that will be sent home that are standard materials. We had a committee, part of our work groups, looking at what are those hands-on materials that are needed by students. And so the groups got together, crayons, pencils, pencil sharpeners, so that once that pencil has been used, it can be sharpened at home. Colored pencils, and the teams by grade level identified what are those key hands-on tools that would be available. Pocket protectors with paper in them with a cardstock, so you could do a whiteboard that children can use. Earbuds, all of these things. In addition to that, we have consumable products from our benchmark curriculum, and we will be sending those home along with our Go Math curriculum. That's also a consumable book. That was something we weren't really able to do in the springtime in an equitable way, but we're going to continue to do that. And at the secondary, for students who are enrolled in specific courses, we know that those teachers have specific things like watercolors, perhaps, or maybe somebody else is doing something with wood shop. So those teachers will be leading it. What we're trying to work out is a way that is a systematic way. And then when the teachers come back next week, we'll talk to them about what are some things that we can do to create a system to be able to get those hands-on materials out to folks. So that's definitely what we're looking at, so that there would be basic materials, but then how do we systematically put out additional materials, both by teacher and by school and district.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
Oh.
More questions? Yeah. Go for it, Eric. We're here for it all night.
For parents that have taken a look at the schedule and feel overwhelmed, or their situation has changed, do they still have the option to sign up for the independent study program, which would not require them being in a classroom at any given specific time, but they could complete work in order to move down the path? I heard that this may be the option that some of the parents who feel optionless could use. Is that still an option for them?
Yes, we've opened up our Surfside Academy, and we've been following up with families who are interested in that. And currently we do have families who are interested in independent study, and we're following up with all those families now. And at our last count, we had about 1,000 students across all grade levels who are interested in being at Surfside, either in our virtual program, which would not pivot between in-person learning and virtual learning. And then we have also a number of parents who are interested in that independent study. So we are confirming those spaces because, again, we want to make sure our staffing is aligned, and we want to make sure that it's not disruptive to our entire program. So we do know that we have asked and sent out district-wide many times, checking to see who would want to do that. And we believe and again, it's the unknowable, we don't know, but we do want to accommodate all the families we can.
Okay, and just because I'm still getting these questions yesterday, there are Surfside offers an independent study program which doesn't require live instruction, that is self-paced, and that's K-12. And then they also are offering the distance learning program, but that one we've actually asked them to sign up already, right?
Yes,
So
that's correct.
The two programs. Okay.
Now, speaking about that program, since we're already on that topic, if we have families that they are going already to Lincoln or wherever else, and then they realize that this doesn't work for them, is the transition going to be hard if they decide that they want to go into Seaside?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So if it doesn't work for them to be to sit with a classroom teacher, or to sit in, for the 30 minutes on a Zoom meeting or whatever, to do virtually the way that we're currently doing, can they go into that one program over through C that they're able to actually do everything independent study, to sign up for the independent study program, so they can actually sign up for that independent study program, and then it'll be okay to transition from one program into the other easily, or is it going to be a difficult thing?
So when we talk about the independent study, we want to be thoughtful about who is participating in that. One of the things we'd want to look at is the current teacher and the counselor, the child's special needs, and whether that's an appropriate placement for them. So independent study is one that we would look at. We would have counselors talk to the families about it and figure out how we could place them. At the secondary level, then independent study would be self-paced. And work completion would be how we tracked attendance for those families. And so we've had for many years a plan and a system for bringing students into independent study, and we would continue to follow that plan.
Thank you.
For reference, when we talk about those two programs, is it accurate to say distance learning is the model that we're all going to start in, and then is independent study how we're going to be referring to it as a district? I think that has been confusing for some families, and we've all kind of been working with that language ourselves. So maybe we establish it now so that we're all speaking the same language, and then we can continue to help explain.
Sure. So the first program that I want to talk about is homeschooling. And homeschooling in our popular culture right now is what we're talking about as virtual learning. But homeschooling in its purest sense is that the teacher is the parent. The parent provides all the instruction. That's homeschooling. And they collaborate in our district with Mrs. Ortega on homeschooling. Then we have independent study. Independent study is self-paced with a teacher, and students are assigned a certain amount of work to complete in a certain amount of time to gather credit. That's independent study, so it's self-paced. And then the third we have is...
Before you go on real quick.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Homeschooling is K-6, right? And then it switches to independent study after that?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why, because those are like the same program, K to 12. So it's homeschooling till you get to, okay.
But students could also do independent study in the elementary level too, because it's self-paced. they could do that. So independent study is self-paced on a contract. And sometimes people know this, if like somebody goes on a vacation, sometimes they might get independent study where they get packets of work so that they can keep up with their studies when they're on vacation, or if a family moves or is sometimes we do something like that. And then we have virtual learning, and virtual learning is led by a teacher. The teacher, the credentialed teacher provides that instruction. Class sizes are based on our contract, and it is based on a delivery of instruction. Students still do work, but we want to make sure that they are led. It's paced on our pacing guides, and that is our virtual learning. Because of the governor's order from July 17th, we are all starting with virtual learning. The difference between starting with with Surfside, is that Surfside will not pivot as orders change. Surfside will stay virtual learning, whereas people enrolled in our local schools will, when health orders change, would pivot into other forms of learning.
And those students who are in virtual learning, that program at Surfside, they would be in a similarly sized class as students that are in the rest of our school district. Is that correct?
That's how we will staff it, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, just if I could add something real quick, the survey that we sent out to follow up to all families who are initially interested in Surfside, when we sent out a confirmation interest survey, it included in the survey a table of just kind of like a 4x4 table of the differences between distance learning and independent study. And also Principal Eric Franzen has prepared a pretty great letter that he's shared with families who are interested as well, that defines the differences in a pretty succinct way also.
Thank you. I did see that communication. It's great. That was why I'm bringing it forward here, because not everybody who signed up originally were the ones that were asking me the questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff or discussion amongst ourselves? Or share anything with Julie? And
yeah. So just the last. For all the parents that are struggling to look at what they're going to do during this time, we are going to continue exploring every option that we can to meet the needs of our families and communities. That includes the day camps that we kind of mentioned, but we're not sure now what we're going to be able to do. We're going to keep pushing to find out what we can do. I'm one of the people that signed up for interest in that childcare. So honestly, we are legitimately with you on the need. And we're going to continue working to meet that in the best way that we can. Just because we don't have the solution right this second doesn't mean we're not working at it constantly. And I thank staff for pushing so hard. This opening plan, the how many pages is it? It's 69, so almost 70 pages. By tomorrow, it might be 75 pages. The things, it's constantly changing. So I thank you all for working. This is extremely comprehensive. And there were some comments that we're not looking at in-person instruction. If you look at the money that we're already spending, that money is spent on spray bottles, cloth masks, face shields, gloves, infrared thermometers. That's all getting us back into in-person learning. As soon as we can, do it in a safe manner for the community and our students. So thank you so much, staff, for the work. I am very impressed, and I appreciate you.
thank you, Eric. Well said, and I echo those sentiments totally. We've got one more item, and we have the public comment. I need a 5-minute break. So with your concurrence, I'm going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 9:20. Okay? So everybody hanging out there, hang out for 5 minutes or so. We'll call the board meeting back into session. We've got 2 more items tonight. The next item is 11B. It is the adoption of a resolution number 04-20-21, ordering a school bond election and authorizing the necessary actions in connection therewith. Dr. Soto?
Thank you, Board. Good evening again. Board, thank you so much for this opportunity to have a chance to talk to you tonight about a local school bond proposal. With me tonight, I have a full team of experts in this area, and they will be walking you through this presentation. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Bonnie Moss from Clifford Moss, who'll be able to get us started. Bonnie, are you available?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, good evening, Board President Blessing, members of the board, Superintendent Vitale, and staff and members of the public. It's good to be here. I'm Bonnie Moss with Clifford Moss. We have been working with the district to assess feasibility for a potential local school bond. And so tonight we're here to provide a brief presentation on the front of an action item for you. And with me tonight, we have other speakers who will be introducing themselves as they go. But I'd like to ask for the first slide, please. So we know that you have been looking at the issue of facilities for a long time, and that your facilities improvement journey is bringing the district and especially you tonight as board members to a decision about a potential local school bond election. Next slide. Just want to say that if the school board does choose to place a local measure on the ballot, that will trigger at what we call an 88-day election window. And at that point, the community will begin to get a chance to engage and discuss these issues. And from there, people will vote. And we know today that you have almost 68,000 voters living in about 38,000 households. So they will be the decision makers if you choose to move this item to an election. Next slide. And so tonight, we're going to speak briefly about the process, the feasibility process. And with me tonight will be Laura Crotty helping with that. And then we're going to ask Blake Beam from KNN Public Finance, your very, very able financial advisor, to speak about the need, your projects, and the financial analysis that is the foundation for the proposal tonight. We had planned to have John Palmer from the ORIC legal team speak to legal issues, but he's having technical difficulties. So I'll be handling his part. And then we will turn it back to the board for any questions, discussion, and consideration of the proposal. So with that, let me ask for the next slide. And Laura, feel free to introduce yourself.
Good evening, members of the board, staff, public. I'm Laura Crotty with Clifford Moss, and I work with Bonnie on public engagement and ballot measure prep, and I'm happy to be here tonight. So moving on, we know that you all have been talking about facility needs for some time, and you are aware of your facility needs. So we've come in to conduct a series of diagnostics around feasibility between what you know you need and what voters tell us they will support. We built the ballot measure package with that in mind. We are here tonight to bring that to you that you'll hear more about later in this presentation. And once a measure is on the ballot, a whole new process will happen in yellow, including honoring promises in gray. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we're very deliberate in what we're doing. We have a piece that is district due diligence, assessments, planning, legal, etc., board engagement, part of what we're continuing to exercise tonight, and stakeholder engagement. At each step, we're looking for the intersection of interest between your facility's needs and what voters tell us they will support. And now, before we go to the next slide, I'd like to hand the next slide off to Blake Beam with KNN Public Finance.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
And thanks, Laura. As mentioned, my name is Blake Dean. I'm a managing principal at K&N Public Finance. I have the privilege of serving as the district's municipal advisor. So really our role is to act as the district's fiduciary, utilizing our financial expertise to really evaluate bond structure and financing parameters for this measure, and really all matters relevant to the district's bond program. Really, the task at hand is to talk more about the 2020 measure this evening. The focus of this measure really is to align with the district's priority needs based on a current district-wide assessment of facility age and conditions. The measure also addresses some of the long-range goals and objectives as identified within the district's facilities master plan. And so the measure itself, again, being aligned with the highest priority need, targets a relatively modest authorization amount of $160 million relative to the actual capacity for which this measure can be sized. And I say that because it really focuses in on a tax rate, as identified on this slide, of 3 cents per $100 of assessed value, are oftentimes looked at as $30 per 100,000 of assessed value of taxable property, and that is half of what what OUSD can actually ask for under the statutory guidelines, which the max would be $60 per 100,000. So the staff, as well as the planning team, have been very cognizant and focused on really looking at highest priority of needs. And so the 2020 measure would really allow OUSD to continue on with its longstanding tradition of improving some of the oldest facilities within the district. And as Prop H reaches its near end, this new measure would really allow the district to continue forward on its facilities improvement plan. And then the last thing I just wanted to make note of, just as a really a considerable due diligence step for OUSD, working with the San Diego County Taxpayers Association. Now, San Diego County has one of the most prominent taxpayer groups in the state. They're very active, very vocal. And I think that what we wanted to note for the board is that staff, as well as the team, have been very engaged in regular communication and actively seeking their endorsement for this measure. We were expecting to hear something back from them next week after, again, a lot of dialogue, a lot of information, and really just kind of laying the roadmap as to a very well thought out plan that OUSD has relative to this measure. And so with that, I'll turn it over, I believe it's over to Ms. Moss to continue on with the discussion.
Yes, next slide, please. So if John Palmer were able to be with us tonight, he would be here to remind you that the ballot package is actually captured here in the resolution that is before you tonight. The resolution is a document that declares your interest, your intention to go to the ballot, and provides instructions to the county registrar of voters to place the measure on the ballot. You'll notice at the beginning of that resolution that there are several clauses that describe the evidence of need, why the district is moving in this direction. You will also notice that in this document is what we call Exhibit A, which is the full text of the ballot measure that would appear in the voter pamphlet. It includes the accountability provisions that we know matter to taxpayers. When we're talking about those things, we're talking about the Citizens Independent Oversight Committee, the controlled use of bond funds. They're only approved for certain things, chiefly capital buildings, facilities, infrastructure, those kinds of things, mandatory audits, and reporting to the community. So all of those conditions are in Exhibit A. Also, you will find what we call the Proposition 39 project list, which defines the kinds of projects that would be part of this bond. And then Exhibit B is the tax rate statement. So within all of that package are the legal provisions that define the bond measure. Next slide. And among those, perhaps the most significant for voters is what we call the ballot measure summary, also known as the 75-word ballot question. And so we've listed it here for you to see. There's been tremendous attention and effort from the entire team under Dr. Soto's and Dr. Vitale's guidance to put this very deliberate ballot question together to represent the unique sweet spot between what you need and what your unique set of voters has told us they are willing to consider in terms of a measure. And so these are all the essentials that include both the kinds of projects, a summary of the kinds of projects we're going to be proposing here, as well as the financial information you'll see at the bottom of this statement, which is required by law. Next slide, please. And so as we think about coming back to you for discussion and questions and action, we want to just provide a reminder that should the board choose to place a measure on the ballot, once that measure is filed with the county registrar of voters, the entire process shifts from a district-driven, district-funded assessment and planning process to a community-driven, community-funded, independent campaign process. And in that process, the district cannot spend resources to advocate up or down, but can and should spend resources to provide information to the community, factual information. And of course, paid employees of the district cannot advocate during work hours or use district resources, but they may volunteer on their own time. So we feel it's important to just remind everybody of those special rules of engagement should the board choose to put a measure on the ballot. And then next slide. Our final set of reminders is you do have an action item tonight. We're happy to answer any questions if there are questions. If the board chooses to take action to call for an election, the filing deadline is this Friday at 5 p.m. And that would be the filing deadline for the district. And then the election window would take place from August 7th through November 3rd, Election Day. So with that, we are happy to answer any questions you may have. President Blessing or of the board, we're all here as a resource.
Great. Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. We've got a series of documents in front of us. I know we've had a lot of time to look at it over the weekend with other packets of information. Does anybody have any questions for staff or the legal team out there? Or we don't have any public comments filed for this motion for this evening, so it's amongst ourselves to make a decision. I'll start out with just saying I'm very supportive of the bond. I think it's prudent for us to move forward with this effort this year. We've gone through the efforts, I think, quite well the last 12 years that I've been on the board, and since 2008, since the last bond measure was on the books, and we've done really well. And there's more need going forward into the future, as we all know. So I'm really happy with the effort that you guys did. I know you put it together in a very short time frame, and I think you've done a bang-up job, and I'm pleased with it.
I have to agree with you, definitely. We have many facilities that have these needs that need to be upgraded, repaired, and Also powering up our schools to provide the technology, the access, the science, and just to be competitive with our other school districts that are along the coast. So it's way overdue. And yeah, I can't wait to be involved with this.
Great. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions or comments, or I'll take a motion to put this on the ballot?
Yeah, I'll do a quick comment. I think it's absolutely essential. I think that we talk about classrooms, and I imagine the classroom when I'm growing up and a classroom that I teach in now. And we look at the situation that we're in right now in COVID, and it's so clear that being a native technocrat, being native to technology for our children is essential. And it should be integrated into their daily work at schools. That's how you prepare kids for the jobs that aren't even created yet. And we have to integrate it across our district. We can't be thinking about the past, and this can as Dr. Begin said, power up our classrooms. And it's a tool. Like we already have the best tool, which is the teachers, and now we need to give them and the students the tools to take the next step and to really to help us all take the next step. So I would advocate for the passing of the bond, and I would encourage community members who hear this and are excited as I am to look at the list of projects that are listed. There are ways that our district can step forward to lead this North County, and that project list gives you some ideas about what that could look like. So I'm excited. I thank you, Dr. Soto, for all the work that you did on this, and the whole team. I'm sorry.
And I just wanted to say, piggyback on that, Eric. You talk about our current situation that we're in with the COVID and the digital learning, and really looking at each one of our sites and making them, reducing the risk, and really looking at the ventilation. Do we have the space in the classrooms? Do we have the technology? When we start looking at all of that, which we really have to get into right now as we look at reopening our schools, we need this bond like no other. We needed it yesterday. And I'm really excited that the bond money that we used before, I worked in the school district for years, so I watched the school at Libby go from being this really old, antiquated school to being just a beautiful school for those students in that community. So to continue that pattern of us improving those schools in our community, I think is huge.
Well said, Stacy. Raquel, anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank the team for all the work that they put into this, because it is an amazing thing that we're actually moving forward and going to be doing. I'm excited. I am really, truly excited to get out there and start sharing with the community the things that we want to do within our district and how we really want to get this going. So for all the families out there that are seeing and want to continue to have these conversations and to help to get the word out of how important this is for our community, for our students, for our families, please communicate to us. We are here for you to hear your concerns. Again, our schools so need many, many, many upgrades. As you all know, I am like a total advocate on that and what our schools need. And please just reach out to us, help us, work with us. This is, again, it's for our students. Ultimately, everything that we do within our district and all the work that everybody has put into this whole bond project it's about our students and our families within our community. So please just hear our concerns. That again, it's about our students and it's about what we need, which is to upgrade our technology, our buildings, everything. Again, Shannon and your team, thank you so much for all your work. There's a lot. I mean, that book that you guys gave us was amazing and a good read. So thank you again.
So I'll make
Thank
a
you,
motion.
Raquel.
I'll make a motion.
Hang on one second, Stacy.
I'll second your motion.
All right. We got a motion from Member Begin and a second by Member Evans. Any further discussion or comments? Nope. I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? The motion carries 5-0.
Here we go.
Very good. Here we go. All right. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
We will move to the next and let's move to the next and final item on the agenda, which is public comments on items not on this agenda. We've got, I don't know, 5 to 6 folks that signed up. They're probably still with us. So I'll turn that over to Ann to call out the public speakers. Again, these are for comments that are not on the agenda tonight, for items that were not on our agenda and are still, though, within the purview of the board. And there's a 3-minute clock that'll show up on the screen as you're presenting your comments to us. With that, Ann, first speaker.
Paula McNulty. Mark Nelson.
Mark Love Nelson is also at the meeting.
Todd Madison.
Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
All right, thanks. Yes, I'm still here. So Todd Madison again, OUSD parent, school board candidate. We've seen the learning continuity plan, but now I'd like to point out another path the district could take, which involves the waiver process. That should be added to the list of all the options we can do that Eric mentioned. The governor's order preventing in-person instruction has a clause for schools where parents and teachers feel in-person schooling could be provided in a way that's safe for kids and teachers. The district can request a waiver for that school, asking for approval for in-person instruction in grades K through 6. As we develop plans for in-person learning in ways that are safe for kids and teachers, we need to consider this. I would think it should be a priority consideration since we know younger kids have a much harder time with distance learning. The process is handled site by site. A school with sufficient space to do proper distancing could open for in-person learning, even if the rest of the district can't do that safely. In Oceanside, we know one hurdle to reopening is finding space to do proper distancing. The district's hybrid model shows that such distancing would require cutting class sizes in half. That may be difficult in some schools, but from a recent district facility study, we see a number of elementary schools that are already at 50% or lower capacity. With as many as 15% of parents indicating they prefer full-time distance learning, it's likely more than half of our elementary schools would be able to spread out their kids into unused space and accomplish the distancing needed. Laurel, Libby, North Terrace, Santa Margarita, and Stewart Mesa are all near or below 50% capacity, which means we could easily cut their class sizes in half with plenty of spaces to expand for distancing purposes. This would also accomplish something that's long been a goal of both teachers and parents, lower class sizes. In the last LCAP survey that asked that question, before I was no longer there to insist it be included, a whopping 66% of teachers indicated smaller classes was their highest priority for the district. It was also the highest priority for parents. The district and the board have completely ignored that every year, choosing to spend their money in other ways other than class size reduction. And as we saw in the LCP document, we're now at 34-1 in K through 8 and almost 40-1 in high school, class sizes that are by no means small, which is why I'm running for the board, because I think our teachers and our parents need someone on the board willing to stand up for what's important to them, as I've been doing for many years. Meanwhile, if you're a parent at any elementary school and would like to see a plan for safe return combined with the possibility of asking for a waiver to allow that, there's a group of parents that would like to hear from you. You can email parents@openrschools.org to get connected with them. That's parents@openrschools.org. And of course, anyone who thinks we need more representation on our board by someone with a long history of pushing the district to put kids first in their priorities is welcome to join me at toddforkids.com. That's Todd4kids.com, as well as Facebook as Todd for Kids as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Next speaker.
Tricia Ramirez.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Okay, hello, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, President Blessing, members of the board, Dr. Vitale, OUSD staff, and to those of you tuning in virtually. My name is Patricia Ramirez, and I'm here tonight to speak as the Political Action Committee chairperson. Oops, I lost it. There we go. Of the Oceanside Teachers Association. As you know, we are in the midst of election season, and both districts 2 and 5 have school board seats that will be on the ballot in November. Our Political Action Committee interviewed all of the current school board candidates for both districts to inform our decisions on our endorsements. After interviewing the candidates, the recommendations were presented to the ODA Site Rep Council for ratification. We are pleased to announce that the Oceanside Teachers Association will be endorsing Eleanor Evans for District 2 and Mike Blessing for District 5. Their years of experience in public service, combined with their commitment and insight, clearly makes them the most qualified candidates in their districts. We urge the constituents of District 5 to vote for Mike Blessing and in District 2 for Eleanor Evans. If you're not aware of your voting district, you can access the information on the OUSD website in the Board Elections tab under Board of Education. We wish Mike and Eleanor the best of luck in the upcoming election and look forward to continuing our work with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Next speaker.
Our last speaker, Jen Skellett.
Did I hear you there, Jen? Not yet.
She's in now. Go ahead.
Okay.
All right, took me a minute. Had to wake up.
Good. We're here.
In the last
Thank you.
long time. I'm not. Good evening. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "We do not." Oh, someone just lost my thing. Hold on. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "We do not have to become heroes overnight. Just one step at a time, meeting each thing that comes up, seeing it not as dreadful as it appears, discovering that we have the strength to stare it down. We are living in the midst of a pandemic, all of us working without precedent to guide us. Situations like these call for collaboration, clarity, and timely communication. This is not a time for pointing fingers or shifting responsibility. It is a time for concerted action, with everyone in the district working together to achieve our ultimate goal: education in the lowest risk learning and working environment for our students, for our staff, and for our families. It is important to remember that while we are all in the same storm, we are not all in the same boat. We must have the flexibility to meet our students' needs. We cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach. Students at Fossat are experiencing a different reality than students at Stewart Mesa, Libby, King, or Surfside. We need to view our present conditions as an opportunity to explore and build upon the diversity within the greater Oceanside community. Social emotional learning needs must take precedence over traditional curriculum. Young people, just like the rest of us, are living through historic crisis, a global pandemic, a severe economic recession, and political and social unrest. Our task is to help our students make sense of these global changes and to help them maintain their physical and emotional health while figuring out their place in this new world. All the while, teaching reading, writing, math, and other subjects. It's a hugely daunting task, but I know our teachers are up to it. If we work together to support them, future educators will look back and say, "This was our finest hour." How we emerge on the other side of this pandemic will be determined by the decisions made by all parties now. We trust that you will make thoughtful decisions that are in the best interest of our students and staff, and you must trust the experience and expertise of teachers and support staff. Our families have placed their trust in their children's well-being with OUSD staff. Parents are rightly concerned that their children will be spending too many hours online every day. They want their children's minds creatively stimulated, not stifled. The way to do this is to involve students in the world around them, to help them investigate real-world issues, to examine evidence, and to write about the conclusions they form. I know that if teachers receive the same level of trust and support from our administration, great learning will happen. The phrases differentiation, growth mindset, and project-based learning have been ubiquitous over the past several years. Now is the time to make those real. Working together, staff, students, and families, OUSD can make this happen. On behalf of the Oceanside Teachers Association, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And that concludes our speakers. Anne, is that right? Okay, thank you so much. With that, any other comments or anything for the board?
Yeah.
Eleanor, yes.
I would like a point of personal privilege, please.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to thank the Oceanside Teachers Association for your endorsement. I'm honored to carry your banner. And I feel very humble at this point in terms of the trust that you've invested or you have in me. All right.